Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku wanted to save his enemies? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. I'll be honest, unlike most of my peers, my desire to be a hero came much later than many others. Everyone was so excited about heroics. About the adventure, the money, the possibility of seeing posters with your face on it and your name in the history books. But that life seemed so stressful to me. Like so much was expected of you and so many lives, including your own, would be in your hands to keep safe. I didn't need that kind of pressure on me. That wasn't what I wanted out of life. I'll admit though, the one thing I found joy in more than anything else was helping others. I spent most of my free time either engaging in the hobbies of my peers or volunteering for good causes, like the homeless shelter or the heteromorph protests. I never really found too much interest in just mindless entertainment for the sake of it, and thus hobbies never really got my attention too much. I could just never get enough of seeing the smile on people's face when they saw even someone as young as me was willing to help. And I was constantly seeking that feeling of making someone's day better however I could get it. That's what gave me joy. And overall, I slowly began to realize that hero work just seemed like the perfect way to achieve that on a wider scale. Heroes basically make a career out of helping people, being good Samaritans. And as such I did find an interest in being one after all. Not for the fame or for the glory, but just to see the smile on people's faces as I made their day the slightest bit better. To find whatever way I could to help them and be there for them in their time of need. The one problem that made me nervous about the idea though, my quirk. I've taken to calling it light show, as I can turn my full body into a laser. I can't turn while in laser form, only going forward at intense speed, so I have to turn back to human form in order to change my trajectory. Naturally, this quirk works very well in a combat capacity given the burning capabilities and the speed of a laser. But this quirk was clearly one more designed for combat than for anything else. I mean, it's not like I bring other people into my laser form with me, only objects I'm holding and the clothes I'm wearing, so getting people out of danger with it as a rescue type is kind of a no-go. The burning and destructive capabilities of my laser form and my speed though could be very useful for combat. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to be that kind of hero who focuses mostly on taking down villains. I want to be the kind who's a supporter, a rescue hero, not some brute the bad guys fear. But who knows? Perhaps I'll find a way as I move down that path. Perhaps there's a way I can make this work that proper training and support can help me find. And UA would certainly help me find that possibility. My name was Rusu Rashin, and this is my story. After months of study and practice, today was the big day. The UA exam. I knew this would be tough. After all, there were thousands of students competing for a very small collection of spots. And that's why I admittedly didn't get my hopes up, but I still had to try regardless. After making sure I was presentable as possible, my short, yet well-kept bright green hair looked neat, and dressed in my normal school uniform. I'll admit, I never was one to pay much attention to my appearance. Just never was really happy with how I looked, no matter what I tried. Nothing quite felt right to me, so I never really found myself caring beyond needing to be socially acceptable. But today was my first impression. My first chance to show what I can do, and most likely my last. So I knew I had to make the most of it. I heard my mother downstairs, yelling about how breakfast was ready, and headed down to face the day. My mother and I had a strained relationship, admittedly. She usually tended to stay nice and kind, especially in front of others, but I knew that every interaction with her was like a time bomb. One wrong inflection or pace of bad news, and the yelling would get so bad the neighbors 3 blocks down would complain. But today she was clearly in high spirits, given what was about to go down. Guess she knew how much pressure was already on me and didn't want to add to it. Despite that, out of nervousness of what might occur, I scarfed down the rice bowl she had made for me and made a rush for the door, waving to her as I made my exit off for you. In doing so though, as I rode the rails over, I saw another boy in the same train car, looking panicked, checking his phone constantly. Based on his age and school uniform, I had to guess he was going to the same place as I was. But his uniform didn't look anything like the ones from my area of town. Why was he so far out? But that paled a lot compared to my other concern. Why did he look so much like me? I swear, outside of having a lighter complexion, brighter green hair, less curly and more straight hair, and the different eye color, you could swear the two of us were twins. It was almost uncanny. Out of pure curiosity, I took a chance to walk up to the young man. I'm guessing you're also headed off for the UA exam, huh? He turned to me, his eyes staring at me like a deer in the headlights. Yeah. I am actually. I lightly waved, giving the boy a smile. The name's Rusu Rashin, nice to meet ya. He seemed nervous, curling up away into himself in response. I'm Izuku Midoriya. The guy was clearly nervous, and I didn't want to make him uncomfortable, so I simply responded. Anyway, I wish you good luck, I guess. Who knows, maybe we'll be classmates someday. He seemed to smile at that. Yeah, absolutely. That would be amazing. That smile, God, that smile was nice to see. So, tell me, Midoriya, what brings a kid like you out to the coast before class, huh? His eyes went wide in surprise. What? What do you mean? I took a second to think in order to put my reasoning into words. I can tell from your uniform you probably go to a more inland school, so why before such an important exam were you out here? Midoriya started scratching the back of his head, nervous for some reason. Just training mostly. Wanted to be ready for the big day. A reasonable response, really. It made sense given the pressure we were all under. Training, huh? Is there a good place for it out there? Maybe I should check it out. He was sweating suddenly, but I couldn't for the life of me understand why. This was just a casual conversation. Why was this kid so nervous about this? Okay, this has been bothering me, but is it just me or do we? The elephant in the room, we finally hit it. Yeah, the resemblance really is uncanny. How is it that we look so alike? Izuku laughed a bit at that. I guess these things just happen, you know? Yeah, I guess so. We engaged in small talk for a bit between the two of us before we eventually reached our mutual destination, UA High. Due to nearly being late, both of us were clearly in a rush to get there, our convo ending when we made it to the gates, ready to face the insurmountable challenge before us both today. The written exam proved a surprising test, even after my long PRDS of study beforehand. But of course, the real challenge before me would eventually be the practical exam. I mean, how challenging this would be for me would depend on the build of our robots. How well did they react to heat? Would my laser form do descent damage to them? I don't know. This could either prove surprisingly easy or surprisingly difficult depending on the unique circumstances here. After changing into a simple black tracksuit, I headed out to my examination zone, seeing my peers surrounding me. I swear, this really was a collective class of randos here, including a guy who seemed to have an elephant-based quirk, a guy with the most bizarre hairdo I'd ever seen, and a guy who seemed to have a rock for a head. Perhaps an earth-based elemental quirk or something. The one that got my attention though was this cute-looking girl who was just the definition of pink. Just, good God, she really stood out in a crowd. Between their faces I could tell everyone was either very confident or very nervous going into this. Me though, this was always a pipe dream for me, so while I'd put my all in, I knew there were more possibilities for me even if I didn't make it through this. Eventually, the doors opened and I rushed in ahead, the speed of my laser form giving me an immediate advantage over my fellow classmates. But in doing so, now so far ahead, I found myself alone out there, with only the bots ready to face me. I took note of the windows in the area quickly and fired off, the light of my laser form bouncing off them and through 5 bots, all turned to scrap under the hit. I didn't even notice how many points each was worth. For a moment I grew nervous. I mean, this was clearly a combat exercise, but that was not what I was here for. I was able to rationalize it in my mind that these were just machines, but they were representative of villains, weren't they? Was this what UA expected of me? To just be a weapon against the bad guys? Trapped in my thoughts, I didn't notice as a 3-pointer rushed up behind me. I turned just in time to only barely notice the machine ready to bring its arm down upon me, only to suddenly see a tion of squirrels crawl inside the machine. To see the device ripped apart from the inside out by these creatures was almost bizarre in its brutality, but as I turned I saw the stone-headed boy seem relieved watching all this carnage occur. I guess he had something to do with it. I transformed again, aiming myself upwards to change back to human form on a nearby rooftop, hoping to use the vantage point to find more bots. I guess no one else considered this plan, or had a quirk capable of executing it, as I was the only one up there. To say the least, the amount of robots proved staggering, more than enough for everyone. However, the real shock came when the zero-pointer made its appearance. The machine rose out of the earth like a monster escaping from hell, a gigantic kaiju of a beast. And it was stomping its way down the path. Naturally, as instructed, most everyone was running from the behemoth. All except for one girl. The pink one I'd taken notice of earlier. It had seemed like a random pool of acid had burned through the streets around her. And while many robots were destroyed in this acid, it also seemed to have made a wreck out of any potential exit from the zero-pointer's current path. I didn't have the heart to ignore this. She had no way out of there. But maybe I did. I lasered my way back to the ground, before doing a quick double transform to change my direction right towards her, flying through multiple buildings to reach her on near the other side of the testing grounds. And just barely before the machine stomped down on her, the girl seemed to be pointing her arms up towards the beast's foot in some pointless attempt to stop it. I turned to human midair and grabbed her off the ground, my momentum carrying the both of us over the holes in the road and the acid that made them, to reach solid ground. I felt relieved to have made it in time. That she was safe, but that relief was quickly replaced with burning pain in my back out of nowhere. Seemingly right where she grabbed me after I took a hold of her. Was the acid her quirk? Did it get on me? The pain was unbearable. Unlike anything I had ever felt as I curled up on the ground, screaming in pain. Just barely audible over my screams was the girl feverishly apologizing for hurting me, mixed with thanks for saving her. Things only got worse though as more robots showed up from around the corner, 3 of them. But I was basically paralyzed by the pain in my back, unable to move from my position on the ground. Would this be the end of me? The girl I had just saved suddenly returned the favor, unleashing a stream of acid their way that rendered them asunder. Thank you. Those were the only words I could get out before she turned to me. Please, is there anything I can do to help? This is kinda my fault after all. No, just go. Go get your exam. Go be a hero. It's okay. I looked up at the sky, realizing the gravity of my words. Was this me giving up? I mean, there was nothing I could do. This pain was unbearable. I could barely move. The points I had gotten were all I was going to get, and there seemed to be quite a bit more exam to go. Despite my words though, she stood up and gave a very simple response. What kind of hero abandons the guy who saved him, huh? She got me over to a bench, helping me to sit down before more robots came our way, but she seemed more than capable of taking them down, each one by one, defending me in my fragile state. In that moment, this girl really was my hero. A few minutes later the exam came to an end, the famous youthful heroine, recovery girl, coming forth to heal my acidic injury, much to my surprise. Despite that though, all I could do was turn to my bubblegum savior and say, "Thank you. Thank you so much. I wouldn't have blamed you if you left me behind to get more points, but you stuck around and protected me anyway." The girl smiled at me, a cheery, yet infectious smile. "Oh come on, it was the least I could do after you saved my life back there from that big one, plus it was kinda my fault you got hurt in the first place." The bashful look as she made that admission was truly adorable. "I'm Rusu Rasheen. It's nice to meet you." The girl looked me in the eye, smiling. Mina Ishido. "Nice to meet ya too." As the two of us shook hands for what would most likely be the only time we ever met face to face after my failure here, I truly felt like I had done the right thing despite it. I spent the next week studying, setting up to apply to a less prestigious, non-hero school as a backup. I knew that after what had happened, my enrollment would be highly unlikely, so I might as well be prepared in my search for an alternative. My mother certainly read me the riot act after she found out what occurred. I can still hear her angered screams about how I had wasted the opportunity of a lifetime on some girl, and how I'd forever be seen as an embarrassment to her. Those words hurt, undeniably so, but they were nowhere near as hurtful as the thoughts reverberating through my head in failure. Despite that though, the moment I saw the letter arrive from you, I took it up to my room and opened it up. If they were going to fail me, I at least wanted to give it a proper read. An acknowledgement of what I had attempted. Instead, a small little disc fell out of the letter, which started up a hologram of All Might? What was Japan's #1 hero doing on a UA holo letter like this? Greetings, young Rasheen. The man's voice echoed throughout my room. Allow me to get straight to the point, as I'm already far behind on recording these holo letters. You passed the written exam with flying colors, one of the top 5 scorers in fact. Such a high number, guess my studying did pay off. However, you only got 8 points in the practical exam, quite a few less than the passing grade. I knew it. I honestly hoped for a bit higher, maybe a few of the bots I did take down being higher value. But the evidence was absolute. I had a FAI. However, the exam was not merely graded on combat alone. Wait, what? UA could not in good conscience overlook the heroic actions you undertook during your exam, risking your life and your grade for the sake of another, to the point of enduring accidental injury from your rescue. Truly inspired. They accounted for that? And as such, the judges saw fit to grant you 50 rescue points. My mouth went wide as my name was displayed on the chart, much to my shock. I was number 11. I had qualified. You passed the exam, young man. Welcome, Rusu. I could feel my chest thumping, knowing the words that were about to come were far different from what I expected. You've made it. You're now part of the Hero Academia. Those words floored me. I was in. I had potential. My mother could finally look at me again after she saw the news, hugging me tight and saying she always believed in me, despite how much I knew those words rung hollow after the week I received from her. This was my future. I was going to be a hero. I got up super early on my first day of school and rushed out the door after my usual routine. I barely had a second to say goodbye to Mom before making an exit. I was actually one of the earliest to arrive in the class. Guess you can tack that up to my usual fast speed. But here I was, sitting within Class 1A. I'd made it. Soon after to arrive was a blue-haired young man with glasses, much to his surprise. Ah, you're here. You truly are quite the model student, perhaps more than even me given how early you've arrived. I was always first to arrive during my time at Somei. I remembered this guy. He spoke up during the explanation of the practical exam, and also called out Midoriya when doing so. I'm Tenya Ida from, as mentioned, Somei Private Academy. I looked him in the eye with a smile. Likewise, Rusu Rasheen, Obi Academy. You realized there was something more to the practical exam, didn't you? You must be very perceptive, and I completely misjudged you. I admit, as a student you're far superior to me. The praise was awkward and overwhelming. Something I did not expect. Not that I don't appreciate it, but are you sure you got the right guy? We've never interacted before as far as I can tell. Wait, what? But I saw you. You're the one that took out that 0-pointer to save that girl, aren't you? I could only help but chuckle at that. I wish. I only got a girl out of the way of a 0-pointer and got acid burned in the back for my troubles. If I had to hazard a guess, you sure you're not thinking of Midoriya? Midoriya? Yeah, we met on the train on the way to the exam. Was surprised just how much we look alike. Ida took a moment to think. My apologies, Rasheen. Regardless, from the sounds of things you are quite the student in your own right and are also deserving of praise. God, would this guy stop praising me already? This is getting kind of creepy. Soon after, many other students slowly made their way into the class over the course of the morning. To my delight, one of them was actually Ashido, whose face lit up in a giant blush at the sight of me. Oh my word, Rasheen. You're here in 1A too. I know, it's amazing to see you. She suddenly hugged me close, much to my surprise. But I'm far from one to refuse such a kind gesture and return the embrace. However, that was soon interrupted by another face who entered moments later. A rather gruff-looking young man with spiky blonde hair, who glared at me with quite the angered scowl. If you really think your new hairdo's gonna hide anything about you, you're wrong. You're still a freaking loser, ya dim and nerd. Ida jumped up to my defense, much to my surprise. Young man, that is highly inappropriate. Rasheen had done absolutely nothing worthy of such disrespect. The blonde gave me the side-eye, looking me over. Wait, Rasheen? The nerd has a fucking look-alike now. What the F dash? Yeah, this guy had issues. I don't see us becoming friends anytime soon. It was soon after that Midoriya arrived as well, one of the last to make it in fact. Ida ran up upon him doing so and said the exact same words he said to me, making him question if he had rehearsed his little speech for some reason. His dogging of Midoriya did take over the conversation, not giving me room to say hi to my mysterious body double. We only had one more student arrive before our teacher arrived in a bizarre sleeping bag cocoon of some sort before telling us to put on our tracksuits and heading outside. Today was going to be interesting. Could tell. Our teacher, Mr. Aizawa, was clearly quick to the punch, immediately setting us up for a quirk-based physical exam, saying it was the best way to gauge our potential as heroes. The man was quite serious about the craft in a way that could be off-putting, but was quite admirable in a way. Serious to the point where he declared, as soon as one of my fellow students mentioned the possibility of this being fun, that the lowest scoring student would be expelled immediately. Much to everyone's horror. Despite that though, I was able to quickly get my head in the game. We started off with the 100-meter dash, which I easily excelled at with my light-speed laser form, reaching the goal in less than a second. This easily surpassed the rest of my fellow students, much to their shock. I was surprised to see some of my fellow classmates show off their unique quirks as well here, such as Ida's jet legs or Aoyama's naval laser. Given our similarities in that regard working off of lasers as a basis, I might have to talk to the guy, perhaps we could share common ground there. Our second test was grip training, for which my quirk was completely unequipped. As such I had to go about it on pure brute strength, which I admittedly lacked. Given my quirk, I had trained my body for dexterity and flexibility above pure muscle mass, so this would be a concern. As a result I only achieved a mere 35 kilograms, one of the weakest in the class. But nonetheless, some of my other classmates would have an opportunity to show off what they were capable of here. Next up, the standing long jump. This one was an ace in the hole given the nature of my quirk, resulting in a unique, infinite result, due to the fact that as far as I know, I don't have a limit on how long I can stay in laser form. Aizawa's grin in response to seeing this result truly did intrigue me. Repeated side steps though was a unique challenge. I get the feeling with proper training I could turn back and forth from my laser form a lot faster than I currently do, but I'm nowhere near that level yet. As such, I was forced to do it the old-fashioned way yet again. I saw Midoriya panicking on the side and went to talk to him, asking if he was okay. He assured me he was fine, but by the tone of his voice I could tell he was lying to me. Despite that, I simply shrugged and continued to prepare for the next trail ahead. Our fifth test was the ball throw, another weak point of mine. I was very impressed by Ms. Uruaka's performance with an infinite result due to her very unique quirk. She might be one to keep an eye on. However, Midoriya's also proved another point of interest starting with Bakugo's bizarre assertion that he was a quirkless loser. God, writing that phrase down disgusts me. Ida was quick to come to his defense, declaring that he did have a quirk after something he did at the entrance exam, but to me, he was missing the real problem in what Bakugo said. I had seen the suffering of many different quirkless people during my volunteer work. The discrimination and self-loathing many of them face is truly horrifying and I have nothing but sympathy for them. The two continued arguing, but I eventually had to step in. Shut up. Both of you. They both turned to me. Ida, I get you're trying to defend him, but only on the basis of him having a quirk. Even if he was quirkless, that's no excuse to treat him so poorly. He earned his place here just like the rest of us. What right do you have to look down on him like that, Bichugo? Bakugo's hand lit up with explosions as he glared at me, trying to intimidate me. What did you say? Yeah. I called you out. Threaten me all you like, but treating the quirkless like that is FD up. Why I outa? Both of you, be silent. Aizawa spoke up, glaring at us. If you want to respect him, at least have the decency not to argue about him over his throw. And you will respect him as a fellow student Bakugo. Is that clear? Yes, sir. My answer was a lot more disappointed in myself, unlike Bakugo's more reluctant statement of the same words in unison with my own. To my shock though, when Midoriya did attempt to make his throw, Teach just straight up removed his quirk and chastised him over it. It took a bit more time, but eventually he did make his throw, launching the ball over 700 meters. To say I was impressed would be an understatement. Ichigo reacted quite violently to the response, charging at Midoriya, but was held back by Teach. Guess Aizawa wasn't gonna put up with this bullshit either, and I was happy to see it. As for the remaining tests, with the exception of the long-distance run, I wasn't really given much of an advantage. Everyone though, with two exceptions it seems, did get the chance to shine in some capacity during these events. Those two exceptions, Hagakure and Jiro, are fun little invisible girl and earphone girl. None of these tests really played to either of their strengths, which naturally posed a problem. And that didn't bode well for Jiro, who clearly scored last place. Everyone was horrified. I mean, she didn't deserve to get expelled over this, did she? Luckily it turned out Teach was deceiving us, so we'd give it our all, much to everyone's relief. Truly, this had been taxing, but it was an important step on our journey to heroism. In the aftermath of everything, I initially was considering just heading home and taking the time to relax after a hard and exhausting day of class. However, I was surprised when Ishido came rushing up to me as I made my exit. Hey! Rasheen. I turned, seeing her as she ran up. Great job out there in class. Your quirk really is amazing. I couldn't help but blush at the compliment. Oh, thanks. Yours is pretty cool too. Ishido scratched the back of her neck, nervous. Listen, Rasheen. I was gonna head down to the mall today and do some shopping after class. Care to join me? I couldn't believe my ears. Was she asking me out? I could tell by her expression that she was reading me like a book and panicked in response. No, not like that. Not like a date or anything, just to hang out. Me and Jiro were already going and I was just seeing if you wanted to join in too. I took a deep sigh of relief at that. Yeah, that sounds lovely. Actually, awesome. I have some great ideas on how to style you up. You're gonna be looking great by the time we're done with you. And the panic was suddenly returning. Next thing I knew, I was standing at the mall, one guy between two girls by my side as we went into a clothing shop. Ishido seemed very intent on finding a style that would work for me, much to my chagrin, and thus we went around in a flood of clothing as she collected multiple outfits for me to try on, as well as a few for herself and Jiro. I quickly found myself in the changing room, with a large pile of outfits to try on. I guess Ishido considered blue to be my color, as it was a pretty predominant theme among the wardrobe she picked out for me. Maybe it went well with my purple eyes or something, I don't know. I tried out so many outfits, far more than ever had in my life, the girls cheering me on each time I exited the changing room in a new one. The positive reinforcement was nice, but, like had always been the case, my appearance really had never interested me too much, so I didn't really care beyond the fact that they were having fun, and that was enough for me. However, halfway through the pile, I was surprised to find a large blue dress, most likely a sundress I guess. I'm not too knowledgeable on this sort of thing. If I had to guess, Ishido most likely picked it up for herself or Jiro at some point, but got it mixed up in the pile due to the blue color of it or something. For the sake of a bit of a laugh, I thought it might be fun to put it on and show it off. As if owning into her mistake. I grabbed the dress, put it over my shoulders, looked in the mirror and I was shocked. I actually liked the look of this. Really liked it. More than I'd ever liked my appearance before. I just stood there in awe at the mirror, shocked at my own reaction, wondering what the hell this meant until... Yo! Laser Boy! When do we get to see the next one? Ishido called out. Come on. Show us what you're made of, man. The voices of the two girls shocked me out of my stupor before I stepped out still wearing the dress, nervous beyond all belief. The two girls' jaws dropped at the sight of me as I did so, turning to look up at the two. So, what do you think? Mina immediately raised her fists up and squealed in delight at a pitch so loud even Jiro seemed pained by it, much less me. Oh my word, you look so cute. Oh. The praise surprised me as I curled up, nervous about all this. Why did you pick out a dress anyway, Mina? Jiro asked. I didn't. It must have ended up there by mistake. I grabbed that one for you, Jiro. I smiled, clearly nervous, Jiro taking notice. Is everything okay, Rasheen? I jumped back, surprised. Oh yeah, everything's fine, totally fine. I was lying through my teeth, and it was obvious, now getting both girls' attention as they sat down on a nearby bench, offering the space between them, which I gladly accepted. What's wrong, Rasheen? Ashido asked. I don't know. I never really liked my appearance much. Just didn't really care either way. But when I saw myself in the mirror in this, I don't know, I just enjoyed it. Jiro asked. I could only nod in response. For the first time in years, probably ever, I actually somewhat liked what I saw in the mirror instead of feeling indifferent to it. Does that mean something? Oh come on now, Rasheen. Ashido said. You don't need to be hard on yourself, you were already pretty cute. I don't think tomatoes are as red as my face suddenly got, the two girls giggling in response. Jiro, however, turned to me and looked me in the eye. Rasheen, I'm going to try something, okay? I don't know how this will turn out, but just know I'm doing this to help, okay? Once again, I silently nodded my approval. Rasheen, you're really looking cute, girl. My heart fluttered at the statement for some reason. Like it fit me for some reason. I felt I should give an honest response to what she said in the end. That felt surprisingly nice, Jiro. Ashido jumped back, surprised and nervous, Jiro taking a second to think before asking. Rasheen, are you familiar with the word transgender? Familiar? God, I was familiar. Every other day I heard my mother ranting about the concept, calling people like that perverted freaks. That they were corrupted in some fashion. It was a constant talking point in her social circle, so the very concept of that coming into conversation was an immediate panic alarm in my head. It didn't feel right to hide that given everything going on, so I was open and honest about my mother's statements on the subject, much to their shock. Rasheen, none of that is true. Ashido spoke up. Well, this just got a lot more complicated, responded Jiro. I curled back up, nervous. I don't know about all this. It's a lot to take in. Hey, Ashido said, we get it. We know these things take time to figure out. Okay. But please, said Jiro, don't just forget about this and ignore it. Take the time to think it over, okay? I sighed, standing up before turning to look Jiro in the eye. I will, thank you. Mina chucked a bit and looked up. Either way though, we are totally buying you that dress. You are not leaving here without it. Oh yeah, 100%. My second day at UA started out with the normal high school lessons one would expect outside of a hero course. I understand the necessity for these classes, but the mundanity of them can grow tiresome admittedly. Despite that, I was prepared, having studied the syllabus the previous night to be prepared in advance, much to the surprise of my peers. During lunch though I tried to get more in touch with some of my peers, spending the time with Ashido and Yaoyorozu. It would seem that she was rather impressed with my understanding of the material during class and wanted to discuss it with me, much to my shock. You see, I never really was that social a person before you. I didn't have many friends and the few I did have usually had ulterior motives for doing so, as I was quite a bit of a pushover growing up. So to see people actually interested in spending time with me was quite the shock to say the least. After lunch ended and we returned to class, however, we were all surprised to see All Might enter the classroom. Apparently everyone, especially Izuku, was marveling at his costume. Guess it was an old one or something, I don't know. Still, to be trained by the #1 hero himself, that was an opportunity unlike any other. He quickly showed us. hidden lockers in the wall containing costumes made for us, and told us to change into them before meeting him at one of UA's training grounds. I'll admit, first seeing my costume and putting it on was kind of surreal. I mean, sure, I didn't think much of a design. No matter what I tried, I couldn't find something I actually liked visually, so I instead went for function over aesthetics. Just a simple black, skin-tight, LTX jumpsuit with black, shock-compressing cleats, and armored elbow and knee pads, nothing more. It was dark and simple as a costume, but it fit well for my more mobile, flexible physique. After changing into the costume in a bathroom stall. Yeah, admittedly I never was comfortable in public changing areas, so I changed in private. I rushed over to the training ground where All Might awaited us. To see everyone else's costumes admittedly made me feel inadequate. Such elaborate designs with a unique sense of flair and identify to all of them, from Ishido's tie-dyed jumpsuit, Ida's intense armor, or Ajui's attempt at a similar look to mine, but much more stylish and interesting, really made me feel like the most boring figure visually out of the lot of them. Even Midoriya's bizarre bunny costume had a sense of cuteness to it that made it at least interesting to look at. All Might quickly introduced us to the challenge, which was either to defend or gain hold of a large bomb in versus battles of 2-on-2. I desperately wanted to speak up seeing this challenge, but my attempted inquiry turned out to be one of many that proved to be so overwhelming to our instructor that he ignored all of us in response. As such, he moved right to drawing lots to determine the team compositions. Team A was Midoriya and Tsuruoka. Team B was Todoroki and Shoji. Team C was Kaminari and Yaoyorozu. Team D was Bakugo and Ida. Oof, that seemed like a disaster waiting to happen. Team E was Ishido and Oyama. Team F was Kuda and Satu. Team G was me and Jiro. Team H was Tokoyami and Ajui. Team I was Ojiro and Hagakure. And Team J was Siro and Kirishima. To say the least, I was happy to be paired up with someone who I already had some kind of communication with, but that mattered little when my fears were slowly getting to me. I mean, I was training to be a hero so I could help people. So I could rescue them in their time of need, or be a civil servant to help the public. This exercise plays only into the side of heroism I wanted to avoid. I don't want to hurt people, even bad people. That's just not who I am. And the idea that I'd be forced to do so here, it scared me. Luckily, it would seem teams A and D were the first called up to fight, so I at least had more time to collect my thoughts as they were sent off for their match. I thought it best to bring up my concerns directly to All Might in the moment as we waited for the two teams to set themselves up. Mr. All Might, sir? He turned away from his equipment to address me. Young Rasheen, what seems to be the problem? I'm not sure about this whole exercise. Do I really need to do this? All Might put his hand to his chiseled chin, clearly confused. Explain. I came to this school in the hopes of finding a way to use my quirk to help people. To rescue them in their time of need and support them. I never got into this to fight bad guys, despite how often heroics is associated with just that. I don't want to hurt people, not even the villains. That's not why I'm striving to be a hero. Is there some other way to handle this? All Might clearly took in those words and took quite a bit of time to formulate his response, holding his tongue. Young Rasheen, you clearly have a noble heart, and that is admirable. But the world we live in cannot be made safe without facing the adversity before us. There is no better way to protect people than to stop those who would do them harm. Besides, in this day and age, villains are far more dastardly and devious. Even amongst the most mundane of scenarios, they'll exploit them to no ends. My apologies, young Rasheen, but even if this is not the path you desire to take as a hero, it is one you need to be prepared for should its obstacles come your way, and training such as this is instrumental to ensuring it is so. I curled up, taking those words in. Then again, I'll admit I have been proven wrong before in my base assumptions on similar matters. Perhaps you, my boy, shall do the same someday. And I will be more than happy to see that day come to pass. Despite his dark proclamation, I was happy for his hopeful twist on it at the end. Perhaps I didn't have to be so rigid in my ideals against combat, but I didn't need to give them up. I could find a way around. face this challenge without directly engaging my opponents in a fight. I needed to be prepared for the challenges ahead of me, no matter what they may be. Before it was me and Jiro's turn, we had to watch 2 other matches among our classmates. The first of which was Midoriya and Uruaka versus Bakugo and Ida. To say the least, the fight proved surprisingly enthralling, especially given how it functioned on multiple layers of the building, with Bakugo's single-minded obsession with Midoriya proving a quick downfall for his team. This was followed up by the second match. Ojiro and Hagakure versus Todoroki and Shoji. This ended very quickly, as Todoroki froze the whole building and in doing so prevented Ojiro and Hagakure from taking action to stop him as he made contact with the bomb. And this was followed by the moment I had been dreading. When me and Jiro were called up to play out the role of heroes. The villains we were up against. Yaoyorozu and Kaminari. Jiro and I came up with a simple plan in the time we were given to think over our strategy. She'd use her abilities to scout out the area listening in to figure out the location of the bomb, and our opponents, then I'd use my speed and dexterity to quickly slip past them and get hold of the bomb without any sort of hassle. Perhaps I didn't need to engage in direct combat after all. All Might's voice eventually sounded out. Look alive, kids. You know how this works by now, let's do this. And the timer started. Jiro immediately plugged one of her jacks into the nearby wall, listening for vibrations across the building. They're bunkering down next to the bomb 3 floors up. I guess they think bunching up together is their best move. I sighed, turning to Jiro. Well then, wish me luck. If we don't win quick, knock on the door up there and I'll let you in the old-fashioned way. She nodded in response as I stepped outside, launched myself straight up 3 floors with my laser form, changing back to human midair before going laser again right back into the building. The walls were thinner than I thought, so my laser form burned a hole through one rather quickly to reach the large open area where the bomb was. However, to my surprise, instead of hitting the bomb as I expected, I suddenly found myself launched off of it into the wall. In my shock, I quickly turned back to see what had happened. Yaoyorozu strategized against me in particular. The bomb was covered in mirrors, and the room was filled with them. So any attempt I made to go right for it would only result in me being reflected off of it in some random direction. And to make it worse, her costume had pieces of rubber attached, insulating her, implying something far worse was coming. The room suddenly sparked up with electricity flying everywhere from Kaminari. In a desperate effort to get to safety, I went laser to another side of the room, only to hit another mirror that sent me flying. In the maze of reflective surfaces at the speeds I was moving, I quickly lost all sense of direction, turning human again and rolling across the floor into a random, undefined corner of the room, confused and dizzy. Hee, good plan, Yaoyorozu. You really thought of everything, didn't you? I heard Kaminari's voice call out. Naturally, this was an easy assumption to make as towards how this would all occur. I didn't expect anything less, Yaoyorozu responded. Before I even had a chance to get up and regain my balance, electricity shot through my body, bringing me back to the floor in pain. Surrender, Rasheen. You have no chance of victory here, I heard Yaoyorozu proclaim, just barely audible over my screams in pain. I couldn't give in though. It wasn't just my performance on the line here. My friend Jiro was counting on me. In another desperate attempt at escape, I turned back into laser form and shot upwards through the ceiling to the next floor, this one succeeding. I was able to use the moment of reprieve on the floor above to regain my bearings and take a breath after everything I had just endured. That bomb room was built to counter me in particular. The only sign I saw of them trying to combat Jiro was that the door was braced with metal sheets, preventing any form of access except through the walls, something Jiro couldn't perform. That was their weakness, and the key to our potential victory. They saw me as a threat, but not my partner. I stayed hidden above, listening in as the 2 villains congratulated each other for scaring me off, only to be interrupted by the signal I requested in case things went wrong. The door started knocking. The 2 of them prepared to fight, looking towards the door as I returned down below, staying high up in the rafters to avoid entering the maze of mirrors again. I launched my laser form at the door, turning to human just before reaching it, and smashed my entire body through the door, including through Yairo's steel door braces. The impact hurt my body, badly, but in doing so it gave Jiro an entryway into the bomb room. And that was checkmate. Jiro immediately took notice of the mirrors and released a giant sound wave across the room via the speakers in her boots, shattering the mirrors apart and forcing our opponents to cover their ears in pain. Kaminari attempted to let loose some electricity her way to stop her auditory onslaught, but by that point it was already too late, as I had just turned human from my laser form and was standing on top of the bomb. In a moment of relief as I fell over into my side, nearly unconscious after the electric charge my body had faced, I heard All Might's voice scream through the loudspeaker past the ringing in my ears. The hero team wins. Luckily, compared to Midoriya's injuries, mine suffered at the hands of Kaminari's electricity were relatively minor, despite rendering me unconscious. As a result, with one quick trip to Recovery Girl's office, I was able to return fast enough to even witness the last 2 matches of the training session. I was glad that my classmates were paying attention to the results of each match and the lessons that could be learned from them, as it meant I could talk with them between matches to gain an understanding of how my match was analyzed in the aftermath. I'll admit, my attempts at a fast victory in the hopes of avoiding a direct physical confrontation were reckless at best. I underestimated the tactical prowess of my opponents and paid the price pretty dearly. I was lucky that they had made the same mistake in regard to Jiro, who was able to see us through to victory. Granted, their attempts to block the door proved a perfect counter to her as well, but through our collective teamwork of me getting her through, we were able to seize victory from the jaws of certain defeat. After the hectic training PRD we endured, the rest of the day's classes ended up just a blur, my body exhausted from a mix of Recovery Girl's treatment and the electric discharge my body had endured. Kaminari was quick to apologize, not realizing just how hard he was going at it on me with his quirk, but there was no harm done in the end. After all, it was a training exercise and he was my opponent. These kinds of things are to be expected. All of us were glad to see Midoriya return to class near the end of the day, despite his clearly injured state. I was hoping to get a word in myself to the guy, but I quickly found he was dogpiled on by everyone else and held back, not wanting to add to the chaos if I could avoid it. Eventually, though, the day did come to an end, but not without one more surprise for me personally, as one of the fellow faculty members. Midnight requested a private talk with me in the teacher's lounge, the 2 of us making our exit to speak in private. So Rasheen, I heard all about your talk with All Might before your training today. About why you came here. I was surprised for only a second before I thought it through. I mean, it would make sense the teachers would talk amongst each other to coordinate and stuff. What about it? Midnight sighed, leaning back in her chair. I understand your hesitancy to engage in combat, I really do. But you'll need to realize your current mindset is not only unrealistic in this field, but potentially dangerous. These were not the words I expected to hear from her, I'll say that much. I made a similar mistake in terms of how I wanted to handle things at your age, admittedly from a much more arrogant reasoning than yours is. But this is something you'll need to understand. She looked me dead in the eyes with a firm look. If you want to keep people safe, you can't just run around and do everything but stop the person trying to do them harm. It's a poor tactic that will not work in your favor, and it could result in someone getting hurt. I was shaken by this. I mean, her demeanor here was just so unlike her usual persona. But despite that, my curiosity got the better of me. What did you mean about when you were my age? Midnight sighed, clearly nervous to speak up. As a first year, I thought of my quirk as an immediate, automatic win button in terms of handling conflict. Just one whiff of my quirk and anyone trying to be a problem would be incapacitated, right? So, why would I ever need to fight? Midnight leaned forward. I was wrong. Dead wrong. Just like anything, I had counters that worked against me, and situations that required me to engage my opponents despite my quirk's capabilities. I couldn't handle every situation without getting my hands dirty, and that was a hard lesson for me to learn. She stood up, looking down on me. Don't get me wrong, this isn't me trying to attack you for what you believe or what you're striving for, I get it. But your level of extremism about this issue is something I felt the need to address. Please, don't make this as hard as I needed it to be for me to learn this lesson. She helped me up to my feet, ruffling my hair. You're a good boy, Rishin. Don't lose that. You got a lot of potential. Thank you, Ms. Midnight. Of course. Also, don't be afraid to talk to me if you're looking for some advice. My door's always open, kiddo. I stood still, grabbing my arm nervously. I appreciate it. I thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. Midnight chuckled a bit in response. Don't worry about it, Rishin. Think about what we talked about, okay? Don't just keep pushing forward without really taking it in, okay? The innuendo was not lost on me, but the meaning behind it was not lost on me. There is one other thing I'd like to discuss if you'd be willing, Miss Midnight. Midnight sat back down, clearly curious about where I was going with this. Oh. I sat across from her, nervous to speak up. You're the only member of UA's staff who's openly LGBTQ, so I felt while I have you I might as well ask you about something. Midnight laughed in response. Admittedly you're correct, but only because of that openly part. There's a few others who are too, they just don't publicize it like I do. 2 of them are even married, but continue. I sighed deeply, nervous to get this off my chest. How exactly would one know if they're trans or not? Midnight raised an eyebrow at that question, clearly inferring a lot from that statement. I take it this is coming from a personal perspective? I sighed once again. Yes, it is. I recently started to question some things about myself, and I've been scared to confront them. Why? Because I'm scared of what it will mean for me. I recently got some clues that this may be an answer to make my life so much happier. That I have a way to look in the mirror and be happy with what I see for once in my life, but my mom has been attacking people like that for years now. I want to explore this side of me. See if it's really me, but I'm scared that if I do my mother will hate me forever. Midnight took in a deep breath and sighed, looking me in the eyes. Rishin, you're a hero, or at least one in training. The last thing you need is your fears holding you back from anything. Much less your own potential for happiness. God, those words stung. Was I really that pathetic? Maybe it's the right answer, maybe it's not, I don't know. That's for you to decide in the end, and you need to have the bravery to see that through for yourself. Bravery. That was something I needed to think about. But either way, just know, Rishin. No matter what choice you make, you earned your place here. Midnight pointed her finger to my chest, smiling at me. If in the end you realize there's a cute girl in there waiting to come out of her shell, UA will be there to support her. Especially while I'm here. I couldn't hold myself back from hugging her, tears slowly starting to form down my face. She simply responded by returning the hug and patting my head before eventually helping to see my way out of the school. I had a lot to think about that night as I returned home, wondering if perhaps my dream of being a hero without hurting anyone was perhaps not possible after all, and perhaps if another aspect of how I saw myself was wrong as well. On my way into campus the next morning, I was surprised to see a ton of reporters swarming the school gates. Turns out they were here to talk about All Might, now that his position as a teacher was public knowledge. Naturally, some of them tried to ask me questions as well, but due to my shy nature I simply ran in panic before they could get anything out of me. Class started seemingly simple with Aizawa's arrival, stating he looked over our fights from the previous day. He was quick to chastise Midoriya and Bakugo for their performances, but also seemed to single out me for my recklessness, and Mina for her dangerous habit of failing to keep control of her acid spread. Based on what I saw, all of those critiques were pretty well justified. Despite that, Aizawa quickly pivoted the class to the main issue for today, selecting the class rep. Quickly, the class fell into chaos as everyone was trying to fight for themselves to get the role, much to my surprise. Did all of them think they could handle that level of responsibility? How arrogant and/or skilled were my classmates? Ida quickly quelled the crowd and got us to vote on who we thought would be best to lead. I personally put my vote towards Yaoyorozu, given her brilliant mind for tactics as displayed in yesterday's class, as my opponent. This seemed to result in a surprise tie between Midoriya and Yaoyorozu for a mutual 3 votes, much to everyone's shock. In response, Ida quickly took a second vote with only the 2 of them as viable candidates, and the choice was clear. Midoriya won that one hands down despite my repeated attempt to vote for her. Midoriya was less than enthusiastic about the role, clearly nervous as hell in such a position. Oh geez, we really are alike. As such, we weren't really able to get anything done before lunch. To help ease his nerves, I decided to sit with Midoriya at lunch today, and in doing so share it with Iruaka and Ida as well. I was far from surprised when Midoriya said he was concerned about the class rep issue and trying to figure out if he was qualified. Ida, however, was more than sure of Midoriya's potential for the role. This led into a conversation about Ida's family history, as apparently he was the latest in a family line of heroes. Not surprising such a thing would occur at this academy, honestly. He was quick to praise me and Midoriya's actions in the practical exam, but that Midoriya's performance and insight were why he got his vote for the position. Midoriya was about to mention something in regards to the exam, only for the alarms to start going off. Apparently there had been a security breach, and we were being ordered to evacuate, causing a panic. Everyone was suddenly rushing into the halls, clumped together in a giant human pile of panic as they tried to make their way to the exit. I'd use my quirk to get out of this situation, just evac through the window, but the flow of the crowd pushed me to the opposite end of the hall from the window. So I was nervous to do so, lest someone could get hurt in my path. I was utterly trapped in the sea of people, my body bashed against the wall in the panic of the crowd. Luckily, coming to all of our rescue, was Ida, who suddenly flew above the crowd to address us all out of nowhere. I guess he somehow found out that it was only the media from earlier who got in, and thus we weren't in danger. Naturally, I took a sigh of relief as the panic started to settle down. When we returned to class, we were all shocked to hear that in response to Ida's bravery and quick thinking, Midoriya had decided to abdicate the role of class representative to him, should the rest of the class be willing. It seemed everyone was on board with the idea. Me included, with the exception of Yaoyorozu, who was a bit bitter about the decision, but went along with it anyway. Overall though, this may have been for the best. And just for once, it seemed like our group of bizarre misfits would make for a good class together in the end. Day 4 of our time at UA had arrived, and Aizawa was quick to the punch. Today, we were finally going to be getting into what I came to this school to train for, rescue training. To say I was excited would be an understatement. Perhaps someone could help me finally find a way to use my quirk outside of a combat capacity. How I could be of use in these kinds of scenarios. I was ready. I got my costume on quickly and ran for the bus, all of us hopping aboard to make our way to an off-site facility for this training, excited beyond belief we were at this point. I sat down next to Midoriya on the bus, which had a surprisingly roomy and open floor plan, much to my surprise. As such, quite a few more of us were able to just talk together in the moment. Azui, or Sue as she apparently preferred to be called, and I will do so from now on, however made a unique observation that Midoriya's quirk was very similar to All Might's. Honestly, I thought the idea was a stretch. I mean, strength-enhancing quirks aren't exactly unique to just the symbol of peace. Heck, Sadu also has one and he's in our same class. What did surprise me though was Midoriya's reaction to Sue's inquiry, as he seemed to panic for some reason. Why would a hero fanboy like Midoriya be nervous to be compared to the #1 hero? It was rather odd. Kirishima however noticed another contradiction in Sue's line of reasoning, that All Might didn't hurt himself when he used his quirk like Midoriya did, which gave Midoriya relief. What was with my mysterious doppelganger here? His behavior is suspicious as hell. Maybe something's going on here, I don't know, but it was none of my business. After our class spent some time making fun of Bichugo however, we arrived at our destination, UA's personal rescue training facility, the USJ. To see what awaited inside was a marvel. A gigantic facility filled with a bunch of simulated disaster situations. I was so reach for this. Finally, this would be my moment. I could barely even make out what 13, one of our teachers for this training was saying in my excitement, ready to see this through. We were finally about to begin, only for a strange purple portal to appear down below, much to everyone's shock. A ton of people slowly walked out, ones that put our teachers on edge. Out of nowhere, our rescue training practice had been invaded by villains. Aizawa leaped in to face the villains below as 13 led us to try and escape the facility, only to have our path blocked by the mysterious smoke villain who got everyone in here. His booming voice sent shivers down my spine as he introduced his little band of assholes called the League of Villains. A cheesy name admittedly, but the fault there was far from the first thought on my mind in the panic. Bichugo and Kirishima jumped in and tried to attack the villain, but his formless nature it seemed made that difficult for even them. And to make it worse, the villain followed it up by surrounding us in his bizarre smoke, teleporting all of us around the facility to different areas. When I came to from the smoke, I was suddenly airborne, falling for a pool of water beneath me. Before I made contact with the water, I saw a nearby ship and went laser form, landing on top of it. I was quickly joined by Sue and Midoriya, as Sue was able to grab Midoriya and get him up here to safety. "Nice work, Sue. You did great out there," I said. "It's fine. We need to look out for each other in here after all," she responded. I looked up to the sky, noticing the glass ceiling above us, which gave me a thought. "Guys, I might be able to get out of here and go for help." "Oh, you mean your quirk?" Midoriya asked. "Yeah. I can launch myself right up through that glass, and then fly back to the main facility for help." Azui took a second to think it over, but Midoriya clearly was more quick to respond, placing his hand on my shoulder. "Go for it, Rasheen. Go get help. We can handle ourselves here." I nodded in response and aimed my laser form straight up, flying for the ceiling. This was my moment. I'd save my friends in their time of need without having to engage any of these villains. Only for a purple portal like before to block my path, much to my shock. Unable to stop myself in time, I flew directly into the portal, slamming down onto a rooftop in the middle of a giant rainstorm. In a panic I went back to human form, afraid of what my laser form refracting off the raindrops might mean for me. Luckily, nearby I was able to spot Kuda and Tokoyami, and ran over to group up with them. "Rasheen, boy am I glad to see you," said Kuda. "I'm guessing Tokoyami and him were both out here in the original teleport, unlike me." However, the reunion wasn't happy for long, as we were quickly surrounded by a swarm of the villains, ready to attack. "Guys, we need to get out of this section of the USJ. I can't use my quirk in here." Kuda panicked, turning to me. "What?" Tokoyami sighed in response. "So that leaves me to defend both of you. That's unfortunate." "Wait, what?" "As far as I can tell there are no animals here, so my quirk's useless here too." Kuda responded. I grimaced at the thought. We really were in trouble here. Just open up a path out of the dome. Once I'm out of the storm, I won't be a liability anymore. I shouted out. Tokoyami nodded in agreement, unleashing Dark Shadow and using them to punch one of the villains. As the villains tried to swarm us in response, I made a run for a nearby alley, utilizing the tight corridor to my advantage with Tokoyami and Kuda trailing behind me. Luckily, in the alley, Kuda found a discarded trash can and knocked it over, creating a trip hazard behind us that gave us the space to keep running and make our way away from the horde. Some of them tried to ambush us on the other end of the alley, but they were no match for Tokoyami, who alongside Dark Shadow, slammed two of them down at once. Unfortunately, there were still at least 5 more between us and the nearby exit of the dome, and a lot more on the way. 3 of them rushed in, Tokoyami trying to defend us, but to no avail as a particularly large villain with a club slammed it into my side, sending me flying through the nearby glass wall of the dome. With an exit suddenly made in their brazen attack, the other 2 followed me through as I went rolling along the grass outside, shards of glass embedded in my arm and ear from the impact through the dome. Painful, and even more so to remove, but I was finally free to use my quirk. To run if need be. I was just about to make my exit, try again at attempting to make my way out, only to hear Kuda scream in pain. It turned out while Tokoyami was distracted fighting, one of the villains launched a sort of harpoon through Kuda's leg and was pulling him back towards them. Thinking quickly to save my classmate, I finally reactivated my quirk and used my laser form to cut the harpoon line, preventing the villain from getting his hands on Kuda. I tried to pick Kuda up, only for another villain, some sort of man with the legs of a spider, to knock me away and climb on top of him, prepared to attack. This was bad, and only getting worse. I had to do something. But I had never actually thrown a punch or hurt a living person before. Even during the training 2 days ago, I went out of my way to avoid harming my opponents. But if I didn't attack, Kuda could get hurt or even killed. He couldn't defend himself with his leg disabled from the harpoons still embedded into it, and Tokoyami was dealing with his own group of these guys. In that moment, I slowly realized I had no choice. I had to give in and face facts. I turned laser form to build up momentum, turned back to human form in midair with my leg outstretched, and unleashed a powerful flying kick right into the side of his face, seconds before he stabbed into Kuda's neck with his legs. For the first time in my life, I actually hit someone. I caused someone physical harm. My morals, my belief that I could go about being a hero non-violently, all up in smoke. In that moment, I officially became a fighter. And I had nothing holding me back. With the exit not too far from us, I helped Kuda move towards it in his injured state while Tokoyami distracted the villains back into the squall, knowing he had more of an advantage within given the poorer lighting conditions. With everyone distracted fighting Aizawa, I was able to get Kuda up the stairs, where Uraka, Shoji, Shiro, Ashido and Satu were regaining their breath. It turns out my little escape attempt earlier wasn't entirely pointless, as it distracted the smoke villain enough so that Ida could escape the USJ to go for help himself. Despite that though, 13 had been heavily injured fighting him, and was being guarded by the group. Thinking with my speed and capabilities I could move around the USJ quickly, I told the group about Tokoyami being alone in the rainstorm and probably needing help. This prompted Satu and Shoji to run in to help him, leaving Uruaka, Ashido and Shiro to defend Kuda and 13 near the entrance, which the villains seemed to be ignoring now. From my vantage point, it looked like things were probably going well in the landslide, with Todoroki's ice covering the area. Similar results were occurring in the collapse area, where even from here I could hear Bichugo's explosions. My best bet to be of help then was to rush to the other side above everyone to the mountains, hoping I could be of help over there. However, just as I was about to head off, the doors bursted open. All Might was here. We would be safe. This was all going to work out. But that still didn't mean this was over yet. My friends still needed my help, and so I still made my rush over the skies of the battlefield into the mountains. It turned out I arrived just in time, as Kaminari was being held hostage by a villain while Yaoyorozu and Jiro were in his line of sight. But me, coming from the rear, I was able to unleash a flying punch into his elbow, breaking it, and thus freeing Kaminari from his grip. He tried to unleash a ton of electricity my way, but I was able to dodge with a quick transformation to get next to the two girls. "Rasheen!" Jiro shouted out. "Don't worry, I made sure those I was with were safe. I'm here to help." I slowly noticed as a bunch of other unconscious villains nearby slowly started to rise up from the ground, much to our concern. Kaminari seemed to be laughing on the floor with a goofy expression, probably having overexerted his quirk. "Rasheen, this guy's probably the one blocking our communications. We need to take him out." Yaoyorozu informed me. "Okay then, so he's our target. Let's go." I launched myself high into the air, before he launched his electricity at me, then double transformed to move straight down, turning human behind him and unleashing a kick to the top of the guy's head, cracking his helmet. His attention on me, Jiro was able to get her jacks into her boots and unleash a massive wall of sound at the guy, launching him into the nearby cliff wall. This seemed to knock him unconscious. It would seem the tide was turning, especially as we could hear and see All Might locked in combat with the leaders of the villains down below in the center. We might actually make it out of this. Allowing myself to be distracted though was a big mistake, as it allowed one of the villains to launch a large, hiltless sword blade right into my left leg. I curled over from the pain, the impact of the attack seeming to have broken my leg, leaving me immobile. I could get moving and go laser mode, but I'd be defenseless when I turned back to human form if I did. I was a liability, unable to do a DMN thing in my position. The villain slowly got on top of me, seeming to rip another blade out of a fleshy opening in his back, prepared to stab me through the chest with a sadistic grin adorning his face. Was this it? Was that hope for nothing? Was I going to die? Luckily, Jiro came to my rescue, kicking the man off of me and sending him plummeting down the cliff. "Get off of them," Jiro stated as she unleashed her attack, before helping me up. "Thank you," I responded, limping on my broken leg. "It's okay, Rasheen, I got you." Luckily, Yayarozu was able to make us some form of sled to move down the cliffside and start making our exit. With both me and Kaminari out of commission, they knew they couldn't hold out here much longer and needed to get moving. We thought we could utilize All Might's fight with the big bads to distract the villains as we made our way to the exit, but that turned out to be a big mistake. We were spotted and surrounded quickly, mainly by a large force of aquatic villains as we passed by the shipwreck zone. I guess Midoriya and Sue didn't actually take them out, merely finding a way to escape the worst of it. With both me and Kaminari to protect, it looked like we were doomed as the group swarmed us, ready to kill, only for one of them to be shot in the hand from afar. The other heroes had finally arrived. The sense of relief in the moment seeing them hit me like a freight train, realizing we had truly been saved. I guess I didn't realize just how exhausted I was after this whole ordeal, as the moment I let the tension leave my body, I lost consciousness in Jiro's arms, safe in the knowledge that I would see tomorrow. I woke up hours later in the Academy's nurse's office, seeing Midoriya and Kuda in the nearby beds, all clearly worse for wear. There was a fourth bed set up as well, but that one seemed covered up by a large tarp, so I was unaware who its occupant was. It would seem my wound had mostly healed, aside from a pretty nasty scar on my leg. If I could guess, that was the work of Recovery Girl and her quirk. As a result, I was quick to check out and make my exit, now fully healed up, thanking Recovery Girl on my way out. There was something I felt the need to do, something I needed to face in the aftermath of all this. Thoughts swirled around my head. Was this okay? Was I making a mistake? What if I lived to regret this? But in the end, realizing just how close I had come to death's door today, I couldn't let this go ignored and unexplored. Not anymore. I firmly made my way to Principal Nizu's office, took a deep breath, and knocked at the door. "Come in," I heard his sing-song voice sound out from within. As I opened the door, I was surprised to see Midnight sitting across from the small chimera. I guess they were in a meeting. "Ah, young Rasheen. My apologies for the troubles you endured today. How can I help you?" Nizu asked. "I'm sorry to interrupt. I can come back another time if—" No, please sit down. I always have time for my illustrious students." I did as suggested, sitting across from the principal. "And so, I once again ask, how can I help you?" I took a deep breath once more before speaking, knowing I needed to get this off my chest. For the last few days since coming here, I've been discovering many aspects about myself. Things I never realized before. Nizu leaned in, listening intently as Midnight leaned back with a knowing smirk. And after what I saw today, coming so close to what could have possibly been the end of my life, I realized that I can't just keep stagnating and refusing to move forward out of fear. I need to give myself the chance to explore who I am instead of hiding from it. Nizu pet his head, confused. "Whatever could you mean, young man?" I took one more deep breath. Might as well be honest with it. For personal reasons I'd rather not get into, at least on a temporary basis, I'd like to re-enroll in UA as a girl. Nizu was taken aback, Midnight seeming to have a proud smile on her face. "Now, young Rasheen, we are more than capable of establishing such a thing, even without a full resubmission. But doing such a thing is a major change and step that could affect your time here forever going forward, even if you decide to change it back down the line. Are you sure this is what you want?" I looked down, thinking this through. Was I ready for this? Was I going to far too quickly? Was this right? I threw all those questions aside as I looked Nizu in the eyes with a determined glare. "Yes, it is, Principal. I've been thinking this over for quite some time, and I feel this is a necessary step to prove to myself if this is right for me. I don't know if it's necessarily the right path, but I can't keep just standing at the crossroads forever hoping to know the answer without walking." I gripped my fist tight as I told him, straight to his face. "I need this, Principal. Please." Nizu sighed, looking at Midnight, who nodded in approval. "Very well. Naturally, we would need to get permission from your mother. My blood froze in an instant, worse than anything I experienced in the USJ beforehand, and I jumped up to stop him. No, no, please. She doesn't need to know. Don't tell her any of this, please. Midnight finally spoke up for the first time during this conversation. I have to side with Ms. Rasheen here. A few days ago she came to me to talk about all this. I did some investigating into the woman in the aftermath, and she is the last person who should have anything to do with this. Whatever could you mean? Nizu responded. She's a very vocal anti-trans activist, principal. One with a reputation for being very quick to anger and temperamental behavior. The idea of having this information get back to her, then returning Rasheen to her into a private setting sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. Nizu took a second to think, concerned. I'm sorry then, Rasheen, I can't officially alter or amend a student's academy records without a guardian's permission. It's out of my hands, unfortunately. I looked down, quite disappointed to hear that. But what I can do is see about supplying you with a female uniform and informing all our staff about your change in pronouns. That way the only way things will remain the same is on paper. The actual social aspects of your self-exploration can occur without issue. I couldn't help but tear up joyfully at the sound of that. This was such a kind gesture and way to handle this, and I couldn't believe I was being shown such kindness. In response, I stood up and politely bowed to the man. Thank you, Principal. You have no idea how much this means to me. I'm always glad to help my students, young Rasheen. We should have everything set up before your next class. You're dismissed. I made my exit from the room, smiling my whole way home. My next class was going to be a brand new day, and I couldn't wait to experience it. I was very nervous to return to school after the decision I made, and the whole day off from classes after the incident didn't help matters. I spent basically the whole day returning to my volunteer work, helping at a nearby soup kitchen to get my mind off of everything, but even that didn't distract me from the intrusive thoughts. Would my fellow students accept me? How long could I hide this from Mom? Was this even right for me in the first place? My mind was just plagued with these thoughts so much that they even drowned out the trauma of the events of the attack itself for the most part. That is with two exceptions. That spider villain who I stopped from killing Kuda, and that knife-wielding villain who would have been the end of me had it not been for Jiro. That moment that forced me to choose between letting a friend die or destroying the limits of how far I was willing to go. And that moment where I realized just how sudden it could be when my life would come to an end. I wanted to talk to my friends about this, any of them, especially Jiro given her part to play in this. But like an idiot I never thought to get their phone numbers. I knew that would be something I'd need to amend when I got back to class. Eventually though, the day passed, and I headed out to school early. That way I could use the extra time upon arriving to change out of the boys' uniform I used to leave the house, and into the girls' one the school had provided for me, using the genderless changing area in the support gear lab just to cover my bases. To say the least, looking at myself in the mirror after putting it on, got me thinking I was definitely doing the right thing. This was definitely more me than the boys' uniform, and I couldn't help but smile a bit at the look of me. Just from the sound of things as I approached the classroom, things were lively. Guess a day apart after the chaos we endured only made us all the more chatty. I was admittedly nervous to walk in, those last-minute fears of if I'd be accepted in there haunting my thoughts, keeping me frozen at the door. That was until I got a tap on the shoulder from behind, only in my horror to see a mummy. Oh, wait, actually it was just Aizawa covered in bandages. That made a lot more sense. Rasheen, class is starting, what are you doing out here? I sighed, looking in as everyone continued to talk. I don't know how they'll handle all of this. Can I face them like? You're wasting time by just standing around and not facing up to it, you know that, right? Aizawa's words cut like a knife. What was I thinking? Look, I get that facing this can't be easy, but neither is hero work. If you're not willing to challenge yourself, you're in the wrong school. My heart started beating at an accelerated rate. I knew every word of what he was saying was true, but that didn't make it any less painful to hear. Eventually though, he relented and sighed. Look, would it make it easier if I gave you a reintroduction to the class? That way things can transition more smoothly. I turned to Aizawa, looking him in the eye and nodding. That would help, thank you, sir. Aizawa sighed before stepping forward. Very well. I think this pageantry is a waste of time when you should just face this head-on, but for your sake, let's do this. Aizawa stepped into the class as I waited just outside the door, his words clearly sounding out from within. Morning class. It would seem the class shouted out into murmuring among themselves at his appearance. Not exactly much of a shock given the state of him. Quiet down. My well-being is irrelevant. We have important things to get to, and we don't have much time, but first, there is something that needs to be addressed. The room fell silent. Step inside. At those words, I made my entrance, everyone's eyes opening wide in shock at the look of me, my first time stepping into the 1A classroom in my new uniform. Hi everyone. I said meekly. The room bursted into a sea of noise from their collective reactions. Ashido, Uruaka, Hagakure, Siro and Kaminari shouting about how cute I looked. Bichugo's boisterous laughter at the sight of me. Ida's attempts to quiet them down that was honestly making around the same amount of noise as all of them combined. All of these sounds combined together into a cacophonous mess of noise that filled the room. Settle down. Aizawa's voice seemed to get all of them quiet. Rasheen, you have something to say? Thank you, sir. I said meekly. I know this may come as a shock to you, but I've been doing quite a bit of self-discovery over these past few days, and I've come to the realization that I am most likely a trans girl. This isn't a sure thing yet, admittedly, I'm still overall exploring my identity in this regard, but, at least for the time being, could you all please refer to me by feminine pronouns? Thank you. The class fell silent, Ida being the first to speak up. Of course, Rasheen. As our friend and colleague, we as a class should be there to support you in this matter. As class rep, I would feel undignified to do anything less. Jiro was the next to respond. Figured things were going this way after a few days ago. Rockin' that uniform by the way, Rasheen? God, the blush on me hit something fierce, before Midoriya spoke up. Yeah. We're here for you, Rasheen. No matter what. Mina's voice quickly shouted out. OMG, this is so amazing. Another cute girl in the class. This is gonna be great. Who cares if you're a dude or a chick? You're still beneath me, fake you, this changes nothing. Figures that would be Bichugo's response. We're with you all the way. You go, girl. If this is what you want, I don't see the problem. The shadows will gladly welcome you. You are sparking quite beautifully, mademoiselle. Heck yeah. That's awesome. You're seriously manly. Oh crud, sorry, didn't think that through. You got this, girl. I was on the verge of happy tears to hear everyone's words of acceptance and encouragement, only for Aizawa to shout out. Enough. This whole ordeal was already a waste of time, and you're only making it worse with all your blabbering. Take your seat so we can begin. I smiled before walking over to my seat, smiling brightly as I sat down surrounded by my amazing colleagues. Aizawa continued talking and teaching the class, talking about the upcoming sports festival, but admittedly, a large amount of it went over my head, as my mind was focused purely on how wonderful it felt to be accepted by my peers. That my fears that they'd hate me over this were not something I'd have to face. Admittedly, the excitement over the festival did quickly drown out my announcement pretty quickly to them, and don't get me wrong, I was also excited about the possibility of showing off what I could do. But the joy I was feeling in the moment was so powerful, it was hard for that to be my focus as the day continued, as it was for everyone else. Lunch eventually came, and I decided to spend it with Ashido and Jiro, as they seemed very intent on getting some time to talk to me separate from the others. I gotta say, Rasheen, didn't expect you to jump into things so fast, said Jiro. Yeah, Ashido responded. Why are you doing this now? Isn't it hard to rush into things like this? From what I understand, usually these things take more time. I signed, feeling like I needed to be honest with them. If I'm being honest, the USJ attack is the reason why I'm taking this leap so quickly. Both of their eyes locked onto me, curious about where this was going. Coming so close to death like that made me realize how suddenly my whole life could just come to an end out of nowhere, especially in such a dangerous field as hero work. I realized that I can't just keep letting my fears and anxieties hold me back from seeking my own happiness, when I don't even know how long I'll have in the end to enjoy it before some villain does me in. That clearly seemed to get Jiro's attention in particular. I guess she was connecting the dots there. So, I realized that if I wanted to experience life as who I am instead of hiding from it, I needed to forge ahead and take this opportunity to explore this possibility and see if it's right for me. And so far, I couldn't help but smile as I said this. I'm finding that my doubts about who I am are quickly fading away. Ashido couldn't help but sigh at the end of that. Dimon, talk about some heavy stuff, Rasheen. Yeah, you really put a lot of thought into this, haven't you? Jiro asked. Yes, I have. It's been kinda stuck on my mind since the incident. Oh, that reminds me, Ashido said, pulling out her phone. Mind giving me your number, Rasheen? I wanted to call you yesterday to see if you were okay, but I realized I never got it. Oh yeah. Same, replied Jiro as she pulled out her phone as well. Oh yeah, sure, I replied as I did the same, making the contact info swap. Oh, also, Ashido. If you could, I'd like your help with something. Yes. Now that I have a better understanding of who I want to be. If you could, I'd love your advice in designing a new hero costume. Soon after we returned from lunch, we were surprised to see a large crowd of students surrounding our classroom. Bichugo seemed to believe most were just scouting us out after the USJ incident, trying to see how good we really are, but honestly, at first I couldn't care less. That was until he stepped up to the plate. I heard you guys were impressive, but frankly, you're all really disappointing me. A young man with purple hair and a sullen, sunken-in expression, looking like he hadn't slept in weeks walked up, his voice gravely like he'd been gargling chalk made his presence known, stepping to the front of the crowds. So, is everyone in the hero course delusional? Not only do you have this a-hole, pointing to Bichugo, but if rumors are true, one of y'all started thinking he's a girl out of nowhere. Most of the class panicked in response to his words at first, only Ida speaking up. Hey, you will not refer to Rasheen in that manner. She deserves respect and you will show it to her. Yeah. What he said. Damn, way to show support, Ashido. Respect? Oh please, spare me your nonsense. The young man continued speaking. You know, I wanted to be in the hero course, but like many others here I was forced to choose a different track. Such is life. I didn't cut it the first time around, but I have another chance. He just continued talking in a surprisingly threatening monotone, many of my peers seeming to shake in fear in response to this D-dash. If any of us do well in the sports festival, the teachers can decide to transfer us to the hero course. And they'll have to transfer people out to make room. Many gasped at such a statement, but I was the furthest from worried. All of us deserve to be here. From what I've seen, this guy was just a bluffing a-hole. Scouting the competition, yeah right. Maybe some of my peers are, but I'm here to let you know that if you don't bring your very best, I'll steal your spot right from under you. My bet's on the freak in the wrong uniform. Okay, that set me off to the point where I couldn't stop myself anymore. I launched myself across the room and turned back to human form right in front of his face, glaring at him in the eye. Okay, you really need to shut the hell up? I get it, you didn't get the position you wanted, I'm sorry. But that doesn't give you the right to demean me or my classmates like this. We all earned our place here. Every single one of us in this room fought to be here, and even had to fight for their lives recently as well. So you can take your self-righteous bullcrap somewhere else. The room fell completely silent, many clearly shocked by my words and tone, even Bichugo seeming to raise an eyebrow towards me. Eventually, though, the purple-haired kid lightly laughed a bit before looking into my eyes with a fiendish smirk. Are you threatening me? I called my nerves with a deep breath, not wanting to make any more of a scene than I already had, before I spoke up. No, I'm just getting tired of how you're. I have no clue what happened in that moment, but my mouth suddenly stopped moving, my body freezing up despite having no intention of doing so. It was like out of nowhere, my body was not my own, I was just a passenger with someone else behind the wheel. Now, why don't you go back to your desk like a good boy and let me finish up here, okay? He said with a slimy, sinister tone. I wanted to call out his deliberate misgendering and just how cruel he was being, but neither my body or my limbs would obey the whims of my mind. I found myself slowly walking away from the door to my desk, despite having no desire to do so. The entire class and everyone else seemed to stare in horror, trying to figure out what was going on as I sat back down, suddenly regaining my faculties after fully seated into my chair. Of all people, Hagakure was the first to speak up. What did you do to her? Consider this a declaration of war, the creep proclaimed. See you at the festival. With those words, he took his exit as I gripped at my uniform, terrified, trying to figure out what the hell just happened to me. Many of my classmates asked if I was okay, clearly realizing just how much what had just happened terrified the hell out of me. I was able to reassure them I'd be fine, but even I was doubtful of my honesty there. Regardless, I had to press on. I knew there would be difficulty ahead no matter what choice I made, so I had to face this and keep myself positive for the sake of our class morale. It was the least I could do. And what happened later after class only made how things were going all the worse. You see, as class was being let out, Aizawa requested to speak to me before heading out. Yes, teach. Rasheen. I wanted to talk to you about something that occurred during the attack. The attack? That could mean a lot of things given how chaotic that was overall, so I simply nodded. As you may remember, the police and teachers interviewed all the students in the aftermath of the attack to get a full understanding of how things went down beyond our own perception. And something that both Kuda and Tokoyami mentioned had me concerned. This is about my hesitancy to fight, isn't it? Aizawa shook his bandaged-up head. No. That is a major problem, but it seems you're on the right track to fixing it given how you handled things. Specifically, what I want to know is why you thought you couldn't use your quirk in the rain. I'll admit, that was not the question I was expecting, but I was prepared to answer regardless. Rainfall can have prism-esque qualities that reflect light, and thus can separate my laser form into multiple beams. I'll admit, I've never actually split the beam of my laser form before, as I've always thought doing so would be the equivalent of splitting my own body in half. It would most likely kill me. Aizawa seemed to take a second to think on that, curious, but in the end turned for the exit and said, "Train up for the festival. We'll pick up this conversation again once it's over." Dismissed. This was quite the concerning way to handle this. I mean, given the cutthroat nature of UA so far, it was only natural I was terrified. Just what was Aizawa thinking, and just how much danger would I be in once the sports festival ends? Things have been quite active lately. Mina and I finally set up a decent revamped costume design for me that I'm excited to see come to fruition. It's been sent off to the support course, and they said they should have it ready sometime soon after the sports festival. But as the festival approached, and after the events at the USJ, I realized it was finally time to bite the bullet and face facts. I needed some proper combat training. At first I thought I didn't want or need it as I'd be deliberately avoiding combat, but as the stark reality of heroism was getting to me, it was becoming more and more apparent this was necessary. At first I thought to ask Midoriya for help, seeing as he's proven himself one of the more prominent users of physical strikes in our team as opposed to only utilizing one's quirk in combat, but he was quick to shoot the idea down. Apparently, 90% of his technique was just copying the moves he saw other heroes do in videos he's watched over the years, so proper technique and fundamentals weren't exactly something he had the best understanding of beyond what TV could teach. However, he was instead quick to recommend Ojiro, given his long history of martial arts training. Realizing his own inadequacies in this regard as well after our talk, Midoriya actually joined me in doing so. Ojiro though was more than accommodating, willing to work with us to give us some basic quirkless combat training in one of the academy's gymnasiums. Just because you can use your quirk to enhance the power behind a blow with speed doesn't mean you can only rely on powerful single strikes. You need to vary it up. See about combining attacks together. I rushed at Ojiro on foot, not using my quirk since I knew using the momentum of my laser form to set up a strike would push him too far back for any kind of follow-up. I unleashed a strong roundhouse kick towards Ojiro's head which he blocked with his arms, following it up with a spinning side kick, which he also blocked, but pushed him out of my range of movement, leaving the two of us too far separate to follow up. You're relying a lot on your kicks, Rasheen. I can tell you're doing so to keep me at range since you like hit and run tactics, but you gotta get in there. Show me what your arms can do next time. Ojiro turned to Midoriya, sitting on the bench watching it all go down. Midoriya, your turn. Up and I took my seat on the bench as Midoriya stepped up, ready to spar with Ojiro. Now remember what we talked about? Not every punch needs to be a huge blow. Vary it up, okay? Right? Replied Midoriya. The two started going at it, Midoriya raising his fists and jumping at Ojiro, trying to punch him in the face, only to get blocked. He followed it up with a sudden knee strike into Ojiro's stomach, which caught him off guard. Ojiro used the opportunity to unleash a spinning roundhouse into the side of Midoriya's head, sending him flying into the nearby padded wall. Defense is just as important as offense, Midoriya. You can't just rely on overwhelming force or retreat to keep your enemy at bay. You gotta watch what they're doing too to react to it. Good call, I'll keep that in mind. Midoriya stood up, his arms raised. Let's go again. I think I'm getting it. The practice went on for a while afterward, eventually coming to an end with the three of us taking a moment to catch our breath on a bench in the room. Thanks for the help, Ojiro, said Midoriya. I didn't realize just how off I was on some of the fundamentals until now. Don't worry, Midoriya, you're not the only one. Ojiro responded. With quirks being so definitive these days, even some pros see them as the only tool worth using in the box. With how simple my quirk is, I had to learn this stuff to stand on an even footing with everyone. What are you talking about? I asked. Your tail has proven pretty DMN useful during our time here. Yeah, but it's nothing compared to everyone else. I mean, I don't even have any ranged potential at all. I gotta get in close to do anything. And even up close I'm still just a normal human. I'm not like Kirishima where I have a defensive advantage. I have to rely on my skills to see things through. My tail is really more of an asset to add into my skills and grant me some extra utilities, not something I can just rely on without support like everyone else's quirks in class. I never realized before just how much Ojiro needed to learn and utilize just to stand on a relative level with the rest of us. I already thought my pressure to perform was bad, but this was on a whole other level. Say, I gotta know. Ojiro asked. Yes, both me and Midoriya responded. Why exactly is it you two look so similar? Are you secretly siblings or something? The question floored us. I guess it wasn't the most unrealistic assumption, however. As far as we know, it's actually just more of a coincidence. Midoriya replied. Yeah, I replied. We first met on the train to the entrance exam. And to say the least, we both were kinda surprised just how much we looked alike. I took a big drink of water, Ojiro looking at both of us, confused. I guess that makes sense. Ojiro took a drink from his water bottle as well. But hey, there's lots of ways you two can take advantage of that. Just for fun. What if you put Midoriya into a girl's uniform, straightened up his hair, and gave him contacts to change his eye color? I doubt anyone could tell you two apart. Midoriya started sweating, looking up at the ceiling nervously. I'm not sure I'd be comfortable with all that. Yeah, that sounds like it would be a bit much, man. I replied. Fair enough. It was just an idea. Midoriya checked his phone, seeing the time. Oh crap. Is it really that late? I really need to get home. Midoriya grabbed his bag and stood up, turning to the two of us. Thanks for the help. See you tomorrow. Midoriya waved to us before running off for the changing room, me standing up as well. I should probably do the same before they lock up the support lab. The support lab? Why do you gotta go all the way over there? Ojiro asked. Oh, I've been using it since it's technically the only gender-neutral changing room on campus. I said, nervously scratching the back of my head. Why don't you just use the girls' locker room like everyone else? I'm sure they'd be fine with it. Yeah, but I just don't want to make them uncomfortable. I said, clearly embarrassed by the prospect. Look, Rasheen, you don't gotta be so nervous all the time. Our class likes you, except maybe Bokogu, but he doesn't seem to like anyone. Okay, That got a chuckle out of me admittedly. My point is, you don't need to isolate yourself like that just 'cause you're trans. We already said we support you, and we mean it. You don't need to make things harder on yourself. Demon, it felt good to hear that, but still, I wasn't quite ready to accept that yet. I'll keep that in mind. Thanks, Ojiro. Anytime. And with that the two of us parted ways, me making my route back to the main building's support lab. When I got there though, I was surprised to run into an unfamiliar face. A young woman with pink dreadlocks and a black undershirt, currently hard at work pounding on a large piece of metal into shape with a hammer. Naturally, the act of entering the room seemed to get her attention. Oh hey, didn't expect to see anyone here this late. Especially someone from the hero course, she said. Yeah, just needed to borrow the changing room. I won't get in your way. Oh. She seemed to realize. You're that trans girl from 1A, aren't you? Okay, seriously, how is it everyone knows about me already? Does information really spread that fast around this school? You know, I've been assigned to help out on that new costume you requested. Quite the change from your last one, gotta say. Yeah, I replied nervously. I wanted a costume that was more to me. As any hero would, of course, she enthusiastically replied as she ran up to me suddenly, much to my surprise. The name's Mei Hatsum. Nice to meet you. DMN, this girl had so much energy it was making Emmy uncomfortable, but the positivity in her vibe was pretty infectious and balanced it out pretty decently. Rusu Rashin, nice to meet you too. But you know, she stared going off. Looking at the design, it seems like there's still more that could be done with it. Have you considered the idea of maybe making the edges of the large petals in the skirt into blades? Blades? Yeah, that terrified me admittedly. I mean, think about it, then you could spin around like whoosh. Zoom. She started pirouetting around the room, I guess to illustrate her idea. And be like a spinning top of destruction. It would be awesome. My first immediate response would be to shut down the idea immediately. That seemed way too dangerous for my vibe of trying to be a non-violent hero. But then the thought occurred to me. At the USJ incident, both Kuda and me were basically taken out of commission after our legs in particular were injured. A blade at that height cutting into an opponent's legs would render them basically no longer a threat with pretty minimal damage. That actually could help in my overall goals here. But no, I couldn't do that. That would be a stretch too far outside of my ideals, even now. I needed to find an excuse, anything to stop me from saying yes to this. Wouldn't that hurt me as well though? The moment that skirt comes down, it would be cutting up my legs too. Not if you're wearing my special cut-resistant nanofiber leggings. She ran over to a nearby drawer, pulling out a black cloth that had a durable yet soft texture. She really planned this out. Can you make the leggings fit the color scheme? Of course. That's totally obvious. And with that, I was out of excuses. Sounds like a good idea. Let's do it. Yes, she screamed, curling up and stamping her feet on the ground in excitement. You won't regret this decision, Rashin. This will be my best baby yet. Hatsum ran off to a nearby shelf, grabbing some large extended blades and starting to measure them, now seemingly ignoring me in the moment. I gotta admit, her enthusiasm excited me. To see this girl so excited about her projects was surprisingly enthusiastic. She brought an energy into the room I really had to admire overall. She was admittedly kind of cute in a way because of that. I kinda wanted to spend more time with her, just pick her brain about her interests in this kind of stuff and... Feeling awkward at the moment, I rushed into the changing room to get on with my day, leaving the girl to work on my future costume, now having to put back on my disguise for when I had to go home for the day. The day had finally come. The festival. Everyone was clearly on edge in some capacity. Mom took the time to actually drive me down to UA for once, as she was going to be watching from the stands. If I had to hazard a guess, given her job as a social media manager, one of the pro heroes she had as a client must have gotten her in. Luckily, I had made the faculty aware this would be occurring, and as such they'd be careful to only refer to me by they-them pronouns during the event for the sake of respecting my identity while ensuring my safety with her. Despite that though, upon arriving, I was going to head up to the support lab to change, only for the door to open, seeing Jiro standing behind the lab door when I opened. "What are you doing here, Rasheen?" I sighed, grabbing at my arm. "I was just coming here to get into my tracksuit." "Why?" Jiro shook her head, clearly disappointed. "Rasheen, if you're really going to face up to this, you can't keep running away from it." What are you talking about?" Jiro grabbed my arm, pulling me away out of the lab. "Come with me." Without much of a choice in the matter, Jiro dragged me down the hall back to the main locker rooms, eventually trying to pull me into the girls' locker room. "What's wrong, Rasheen?" I stood back, nervous. "I don't know if I'm ready for this. I don't know if I'm welcome there." Jiro sighed, letting go of my hand, shrugging and turning around. "Well, if you're not gonna go in, I won't force you." Jiro turned the corner, leaving me a sigh of relief. Before Jiro popped her head out from behind the corner with a smug smirk. Her on the other hand. Wait, what? Next thing I knew, I was pushed from behind into the locker room, much to my surprise. Inside, I was surprised to see every girl in the 1A class waiting for me, with the exception of Ishido who walked in behind me. Out of all of them, Yaoyorozu was the first to speak. "Took you long enough. We were surprised you didn't join us on day one, much less 2 whole weeks like this," said Ochako. "Yarabit, the school provided you with your own locker and everything. It'd be a shame if you never used it." I almost felt a tear come to my eye in my shock at all of this. "You're all okay with me being here?" "Of course we are," said Mina. "We can all see where this is going." "I mean, you trusted us with a lot these past few weeks," said Hagakure. "The least we could do is trust you with a freaking locker room." "Okay, almost is gone." The tears were free-flowing now. "Thank you all so much. You have no idea what this means to me." I bowed politely, much to the shock of the others. Okay, girls, I get we're trying to give Rasheen a moment here, but we still have a sports festival to get to. Let's get going." "Yes, ma'am," said everyone else in unison, me included. Geez, even I could feel Yaoyorozu's commanding presence here. Girl really is the head of the pack. Soon after, we were all changed and made our way into the dugout area, where it seemed most of the boys had beaten us to the punch. Guess my little personal welcome held everyone back a bit. It seemed like everyone had their eyes on Todoroki and Midoriya in there. If I had to guess, something might have just gone down between them just before we arrived, but I'd prefer not to pry if I can avoid it. Eventually, the announcement sounded out from outside, and we were all told to make our way down the tunnel to begin. All of us were prepared and ready, with an intense challenge in our way. All of us had spent weeks, if not our lives, preparing for this moment. And in the end, despite all of us fighting for it, only one of us would be on top when the day was done. Surprisingly, they spent quite a bit of time doing introductions, setting things up. With us being the first in the arena, it meant that we were literally just supposed to stand there, waiting as every other class participating was called out to make their entrance. All those eyes watching me, passing judgment on me. This moment could define our future after all. So glad the tracksuits were the same no matter what gender was wearing them, so that under no circumstances would that awkwardness add into things. But if we want to talk about awkwardness, nothing is more exemplary of it than Bichugo's student pledge. Oh yeah, for some reason the school thought it was a good idea to give that a-hole the mic for this. Ida seemed to think it was because he was overall the highest scorer in UA's enrollment practical exam this year, but still, they had to have more sense than this, right? The fact that they actually let him loose with the speech he gave proved otherwise. "I just want to say, I'm gonna win." That was it, the most arrogant, idiotic thing anyone could say before participating in a competition. If he lost, it made him a liar. If he won, congrats, it's a foregone conclusion, it's no longer anywhere near as impressive. Not to mention how much the arrogance of it set off all our peers royally. I swear, that was possibly the dumbest thing he could have done, even on a self-interest level. What was this dumbass thinking? Anyway, once that was over, the roulette started spinning to determine what the first game we'd participated in was going to be, and in a mix of what was possibly either the worst or best possible result for me, it ended up being an obstacle course race. Best because it gave me an advantage over the rest of my peers. Worst because it was too big an advantage. My quirk would basically trivialize this sort of challenge. I'd be miles ahead of everyone without issue, getting a lot of eyes on me out of nowhere. That's not to mention how it would look like this was barely a challenge, and thus it would just be a show of my quirk, not necessarily my skill. Regardless, I owed it to myself and everyone else to do my best without hesitation. It's what everyone would expect of me. Anything less would look demeaning to them. As such, the moment that buzzer hit, I was gone. Off in laser form, moving at light speed down the tunnel far ahead of everyone. I was surprised to see a bunch of the robots from the practical exam, but I just shot right through them, 5 being destroyed, my laser form shooting right through them as they were in my path. Right after the robots was the first turn, so I was forced to turn human to alter my trajectory, but I could change forms human and back to laser form within only a full second at this point after my training, so that far from impeded me. Next obstacle, a large hole filled with platforms to jump across. Once again, trivialized by my laser form, flying right over it in a continuous straight line. Another turn, another shift, only a second once again. The last obstacle was a minefield. Again, not a problem since I was flying right over it. Admittedly, it did make me concerned for the other competitors, dealing with such a dangerous obstacle, but I couldn't let that stop me. Not now. It was a straight line to the finish. Nothing in my way, no problems to face. Just a straight shot there at continued light speed. And before the commentators even got a word in for most of the obstacles, I'd reached the finish line in less than 7 seconds. A world record for this challenge by an insane degree. The crowd jaws were dropped by how my quirk could straight up trivialize this challenge. Admittedly, I couldn't decide if I felt justified for doing my best or embarrassed for showing up everyone. How bad did I do so? The person in second place, Todoroki, had only just gotten out of the initial tunnel. I had won the first challenge by an insane landslide. And I knew the later challenges would hopefully allow me to show off more than just the advantages of my quirk. But in the end, all that was left to do was reluctantly wait and see how everyone else handled being so far behind, even in second place. At the other end, the other students swarmed me with their different reactions to how things went down. Midoriya, who surprisingly ended up in second, was disappointed, but overall understanding and happy I was able to continue, not blaming me for what occurred at all. Ida, Uruaka, Yaoyorozu, Ashido and Kirishima had similar reactions. The two who were most contentious were Bichugo and Todoroki, who could barely look me in the eye after what occurred. If I had to hazard a guess, Todoroki now saw me as a threat, and thus didn't want to associate with me. As for Bichugo, honestly, after that bullshit speech I couldn't care less what thought was in that lack of a brain of his. In the end, the first 42 could continue, and the next contest was chosen, a cavalry battle. Finally, a chance to challenge myself instead of trivializing things. Granted, their mention of the placement in the first challenge determining the point worth of a player did get me concerned, especially when they announced I was worth 10 million points, much to my horror. And what made it worse, my quirk gave me insanely good air mobility and speed as my best attributes, but in a competition like this where I had to stay close to my teammates, I'd almost be a liability. And with seemingly no one wanting to team with me due my insane amount of points, I had a big problem. But what I did have was a plan. With my airborne mobility, and the rules stating I only couldn't land on the ground, I technically could just remain airborne the whole time and perform snatch and grabs. But then occasionally returning to my cavalry when the situation called for it. But to perfect it, I needed 2 things. Someone who could make for me a bigger platform to land on for safety, and someone strong enough to keep up such a platform. For the former, I had 2 options. Yaoyorozu with her creation, or Todoroki with his ice constructs. For the latter, I also had 2 options. Midoriya or Sato. Todoroki was dead out given his attitude today, so my best bet was Yaoyorozu. Unfortunately though, she was already in a team of 4, so I was in trouble. Okay, the platform was a safety measure. As long as I had people who could handle the sudden on-again off-again of things, I'd still be golden. Midoriya was my best bet. I had to talk to him right then and there. He was impressed by the strategy, thinking it had merit and that it could work, But there was a problem. I'm sorry, Rasheen, but I really need to stand out today. I have more counting on me than you can ever know. I can't allow myself to be eclipsed in your shadow by being on your team here. Those words come from Midoriya of all people. They stung hard. I'm sorry, Rasheen, but I wish you good luck. He slowly walked away towards Tokoyami, Mei, and Ruaka in the aftermath. I'm guessing he's already formed a team with them. At that point I was slowly getting desperate. What was I supposed to do? Would I find anyone to team up with me in this short 15-minute time PRD at all? Much less someone that could make for a good strategy? Hey, Rasheen. I felt a hand on my shoulder, much to my surprise. Someone wanted to team up with me, even with my insane point total? I was horrified to come face to face with him. That same purple-haired transphobe from the other day. He stood there in front of me with that same sheet-eating grin as before. Much to my dismay. I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot the other day. The name's Shinso, Hitoshi Shinso. Okay, this was getting weird. Why was this guy suddenly making nice with me, especially after what he pulled the other day? I'll admit, I underestimated you. After that showing in round 1, you've more than proven you're in 1A to stay. You're no longer on my assumed chopping block. I continued to stand back, trying to figure out where this was going as he smiled once again, looking me in the eye. I see you still need a team for this thing. Wanna join mine? The thought was enticing. The clock was ticking and I still had no team and no strategy. But was I really willing to trust this guy in any fashion after whatever he did to me the other day? No, I couldn't. Even in a desperate moment like this, I have my standards. No, absolutely not. Why would I ever do? And out of nowhere, the world went black, the last thing I saw being his smug but grin. Seemingly moment later, I was woken up to the words, "Time's up," being shouted by present mic being announced. I was somehow on my feet with Ojiro to my right, and some kid from class 1B in front. And Shinso's foot in my hand. Horrified, I dropped him and stepped back, trying to figure out what the hell had happened. Everyone around me was already in a cavalry position, or climbing down from it. That wasn't an announcement that the strategizing was over. It was an announcement that the second round was over. That BS dirty messed with my mind again. Somehow to an even more extreme degree this time due to blacking out in this instance. Based on the scarves on his head and the following announcements. I was relieved to see Shinso's bullshit did get me into the next round as part of the third-place team, but that was nowhere near justification for this. And all he had to say for himself was, "Thanks for all your help," said in the most smug, cruel way he possibly could. Even with my ideals, it took all I had in me not to rush over there and beat his face in. Either way though, his bullshit hadn't cost me everything. I still had a chance to win this competition overall. And I wasn't about to waste it here over one guy being an absolute piece of shit. With the lunch break provided, I decided to watch over a video of how the cavalry battle went down, just to get some idea of what happened out there. I'll admit, Bakugo utilizing a similar strategy to the one I wanted to use and taking to the air was not something I expected. Even if he sometimes performs absolutely stupid moves, he apparently did still have a brain in there. Midoriya working with Hatsume's tech also greatly impressed me. Seeing just how varied her gear was and all things she could pull off with it, really did show me that even with how much praise I already had for her, I was still underestimating her. And of course, then there was my performance. To my surprise, it wasn't humiliating or anything. I wasn't put in the line of fire or made a punching bag. But it wasn't anything positive either. Nothing glorious or anything that would make me stand out at all. Shinso turned me into a freaking background extra in his show. In a way that almost made it worse than if he did do something humiliating. I may not be one for the spotlight, but at least then it would show he gave enough of a sheet to show some disdain. It got me wondering if he was ever even really a transphobe, or was he just saying that sheet to get under my skin back then, given he seemed to care so little. Either way, what's done is done and I had to move forward. Naturally, given everything that happened, me teaming up with him confused the hell out of my friends. Ida, Ashido and Jiro in particular took the time to comfort me about what happened, reassuring me that it was not my fault. Deep down I knew that I really did. But it certainly still felt like it was. Especially given that even after 2 different times of being subjected to it, I still had no idea just how he was activating his quirk, making me feel like an idiot. Eventually though, the lunch break ended, and we were called back to set up the final tournament. Before we even drew lots to determine our places in the bracket though, something surprised me. Ojiro withdrew. He said that because he also blacked out like I did, he didn't feel right accepting his place in the final tournament, thinking he didn't properly earn it, and that by doing so, he'd be validating Shinso's behavior of making him his puppet. Same with the 1B student, Shota. Honestly, this put me in a big spur-of-the-moment quandary. Should I join them? I mean, I was in the exact same position as those two. Should I drop out in solidarity? Did I agree with their ideals here? There was a lot riding on this decision, and very little time to make it. And with quite a few eyes on me, knowing I'd suffered there too, I let the following words leave my mouth. No. I refused to give in. Many gasped in response. Yes, what he did to me was horrible, and you may see it as me validating his behavior, but I refuse to let his actions dictate me ending my journey in this competition. Shinso doesn't deserve the satisfaction. To quote the #1 hero, I am here. And frankly, as long as I am, I refuse to just lay down and accept that this JRK gets to steal my potential at reaching the top. I'd see that as an insult to everyone who's fought beside me, and even more of a validation of what he did, because he just gets to cost me this opportunity without any consequences. I'm staying in this contest. Shinso, go to hell, see you in the tournament. Even more eyes were on me upon that declaration. I guess it struck a nerve, because Ishido started clapping, followed Midoriya, and slowly but surely by a surprising amount of the other competitors and surrounding audience. I turned to Ojiro, putting out my hand, offering him the chance to join me in my side, but to my surprise he instead turned away. I'm sorry, Rasheen. I see where you're coming from, but my pride won't allow it. I offered to Shota as well, but he also turned away sullenly, and this time silently. In response, 2 other students from one of the losing teams were picked to replace Shinso's other victims, and the tournament continued its setup. Despite my proclamation though, what happened next disappointed me. The lots were drawn, filling in the tournament bracket, and Shinso was placed on the opposite side. The only way I'd be able to get payback for what he did would be if both of us made it to the final, a very unlikely possibility given the competition on both sides of things. I saw that he was facing Midoriya in the first match, turned to my friend and said, "Since I most likely won't get the chance, give him hell for me, will ya?" Midoriya gave me a determined look and nodded, clearly understanding what I meant with those words. I realized though, in my desperation to face the one who took advantage of me, I didn't even take note of who I would be facing first, and got an answer I didn't know how to handle. My first opponent was Ishido. Not only the first friend I made at UA, someone I had grown very close to, but the one whose quirk accidentally incapacitated me very easily back during the practical exam, rendering me helpless. And this time she'd be trying to do it on purpose, making it all the more likely to reoccur. So many thoughts on this swirled in my head. Was I strong enough to stand a chance now? How would I avoid a repeat of what happened back then? And could I find it in me to attack someone who's been nothing but kind and supportive to me so far, even for the sake of a competition like this one? I just stared blankly at the board, letting all these ideas, fears and questions swirl in my head, only interrupted by her placing her hand on my shoulder, hearing her kindly utter the words, "Hey, Rasheen. No matter what happens, may the best girl win." We got a short break as the staff prepared the tournament arena. Mentally exhausted and wanting to stay out of the limelight for a bit, I ended up heading right for my assigned seat for when observing matches and took the time to rest, knowing that due to being a bit further in the bracket I had a decent amount of time to get my bearings before my fight would come up. I saw my mother sitting in the stands watching me. Upon our eyes making contact I could see her proud smile, making me all the more nervous. After all, how long would it be before things went wrong and she knew everything? Eventually though, the first match started. Midoriya versus Shinso. I stayed silent, watching from my seat next to Jiro, just waiting to see how this played out. My mysterious, yet kind-hearted and friendly doppelganger. Versus the a-hole who had twice overtaken advantage of me. The rules were simple: victory is by either a pin, being thrown out of the arena, or surrender, and outside of lethal force, anything goes. I was glad to see that Shinso's behavior didn't go by without at least some consequence, as during his introductions, Present Mike referred to him as the controversial contender, implying that his actions had already hurt his reputation. Honestly, I was glad to hear it. Screw this guy. The arena was mic'd, so we heard every word as this a-hole started monologuing as the match began. You know, in a way, this is a test of just how strong your spirit is. I wonder if yours is any stronger than your twin. Midoriya remained silent. Perhaps he figured out something about this guy's quirk that I hadn't. I mean, that whole little speech he made about me. Talk about self-righteousness. How pathetic can you get? Midoriya gritted his teeth, clearly angered, but eventually he couldn't help but speak up as he charged at Shinso. Don't you talk about them that way. And suddenly, he stopped in the center of the ring, much to my horror. I knew what was happening. He somehow used that goddamn quirk on Midoriya now too. Even from the stands, knowing my voice would be drowned out in the commentary, and the crowd, I had to shout. Fight it, Midoriya. Don't let him win. And yet, the next words out of Shinso continued to haunt me. You're lucky to have been so blessed, Izuka Midoriya. Now turn around and walk out of bounds like a good little hero. Was that it? Just a few words and he wins this? Just how horrific was this guy? Midoriya turned around, heading back away from Shinso, and only now could I see his face. Mindless. And at this creep's mercy. I just sat there, watching as my friend was about to throw everything away, desperately shouting to him that he needs to snap out of it, knowing it was most likely all futile. Every step he took closer to me spelled out Shinso's victory, making me all the more terrified. Was anyone able to stand up to this guy? How do you avoid his quirk's activation? I needed answers, and I couldn't get any. This was absolutely horrible. And suddenly, Izuku unleashed a powerful blast of air from two of his fingers, breaking them, and it seemed to snap him out of it, much to my surprise, and clearly Shinso's as well. The crowd cheered in response, as did I. How did he do that? I'd have to ask him later, as I needed that answer. But right now, what I needed even more was for him to go back and kick Shinso's butt. And yet all Midoriya was doing was holding his hand with the broken fingers in pain, and I'm guessing glaring at Shinso, who started monologuing again. Come on, say something. Midoriya started silently charging at his ranting opponent. I didn't know you had so much power in your fingers. I'm kind of jealous of you. Thanks to the way my quirk works, I've always been at a big disadvantage, but someone as blessed as you wouldn't understand that. God, I couldn't wait for Midoriya to shut this a-hole up. You're lucky enough to have a heroic quirk. It'll be so easy for you to reach your goal. Oh, like how easily you used me and Ojiro to reach yours, you hypocrite. Midoriya finally reached the guy, pushing him back towards his own edge of the arena, as Shinso started repeatedly punching him. Say something, damn it. I don't think he's gonna, you piece of shit. You made your bed, now lie in it. Shinso attempted to spin around to reverse Midoriya into the edge, but remembering our mutual training with Ojiro, he seemed to grab Shinso by the arm and throwing him over his knee out of the arena, ending the match. Midoriya had won, and Shinso was out of this whole race. It was only then that Midoriya finally spoke again. I know you want to be a hero, and you may have a traditionally villainous quirk. But that doesn't mean you can use it in villainous ways against good people and still call yourself a hero. I respect your drive, but you hurt people. People I care about, and you really need to consider what you're fighting for and if this is the way to get it. And with those words, both Midoriya and Shinso left the arena. If I had to hazard a guess, Midoriya would be taking the time to get himself healed up before coming back to the stands, but when he was here and back, I knew there was only one thing that was certain. Midoriya would receive the biggest hug I could possibly give a friend. Once Midoriya's match was over, the staff immediately set up the next one, Todoroki versus Zero. To say the least, It was an absolute landslide. Or would ice slide be more appropriate given what occurred? Zero tried, but Todoroki's overwhelming power just decimated our friendly neighborhood tape man, to the point where even the audience started going out of their way to cheer the guy up. Midoriya came back to watch some of the fights as the staff took the time to dismantle Todoroki's iceberg he basically left in the arena. And thus also received that hug I promised him, much to his awkward dismay admittedly. Up next, Kaminari versus Shiozaki, one of the students from 1B. This was also another absolute stomp, with Kaminari attempting to go all out, only to be met with zero payback, and a giant wall of vines immobilizing him for his effort. It really is just all or nothing with this guy, huh? He really needs to learn the concept of moderation. Maybe I'll bring that up to him at some point, ID? Such an overwhelming victory given to a 1A student by a 1B student though caused a new problem to emerge. Manama. Guess he was right, that match really was over in 2 seconds. I wonder if his real quirk is the ability to tell the future. Demon, this guy loves to hear himself talk. Hey, wasn't Class 1A supposed to be so much better than us? Okay, I've had enough of keeping my mouth shut. Time to speak up. Look, we're all in this to see this through on our own terms. There's no need to be such an a-hole to the guy just because he was defeated fair and square. I slightly regret speaking up, as while I did stand up for my classmate, it did get his attention on me. Oh look, the gender-confused freak thinks he's a good judge of character. How funny. Just when I thought I was done dealing with this kind of bullshit with Shinso out of the picture, now this guy had to start running his mouth. Ashido hugged me close, sticking her tongue out at the D in defiance, only for Monama to suddenly be pulled down out of sight, another 1A student popping her head out, moments after, Kendo. Sorry about him. I'll try to keep him in line. I took a deep sigh of relief. Glad to see I had at least some sort of ally on that side to hold him back. Up next was Ida versus Hatsum, a match I admittedly never saw. That was because my fight with Ashido was the next one coming, so the two of us were called in to prepare while that one was underway. This was it, my last few seconds to mentally prepare myself before heading in there. Was I truly ready to face off with such a close friend? One who's been so supportive and kind to me? Not to mention just how much of a threat her quirk had been to me in the past. Such thoughts, I had no choice. I had to bury them in the deepest, darkest pit my mind had. I'd dig them up again on the other end, I promised myself. I'd allow myself to embrace those emotions, but in order to give my friend and competitor the fight she deserves, I couldn't let my thoughts get in the way at the moment. I stepped out into that area, seeing Ashido on the other side, stretching. I heard Present Mic announcing us, but with my thoughts so honed I didn't internalize a word of it. Just before the match started, Ashido had some last words. Hey, Rish, no matter what happens here, no hard feelings, okay? I took a deep breath, before hardening my gaze and preparing myself. Yeah. No hard feelings. The buzzer went off, and I launched myself right at her in laser form. I turned human just before reaching her, unleashing a strong right hook to her stomach in the hopes of pushing her back. It worked, but with her extracting acid onto the floor and sliding around, she was quickly able to regain her footing before sliding out of the arena and moving around the arena, spreading acid everywhere. This would pose a problem. The longer this fight went on, the worse the less chance I had. My best position was up close and personal, given my biggest advantages were speed and aerial mobility, so I could move around quickly. Her advantage, though, was twofold: that she could quickly conquer territory by spreading her acid across the floor, making more and more of the arena uninhabitable space for me, and that all she needed to get on me was one good hit with that acid to basically immobilize me in pain. Nice try, Rasheen, but I know all of your tricks. She continued sliding around, trying to get in close and unleash a powerful uppercut on me, one that I launched myself slightly back to dodge. The longer she was sliding, the more acid was left on the floor, leaving less space for me to stand. This could go from bad to worse very quickly. I charged ahead, unleashing a flying heel spin kick into her side. And I know all of yours too. This seemed like another good, decisive blow, but my foot landed into the acid, slowly eating away at my shoe. Luckily I was able to quickly jump back to the concrete and slide it off before it did too much damage. If it ate through my shoe into my foot, I'd basically be done for. She quickly noticed my nervousness to stand in the acid, smirking. What is it nervous about my fluids? God, that innuendo was so bad even Midnight would be embarrassed. She started sliding forward, spinning around in circles, shooting acid off her feet and fingertips to just get as much out as she possibly could and just cover the floor, giving me less and less open space to land on. Not to mention her effect as a tornado of acid made it so it was near impossible to get in close and find an opening. I had to change up my strategy and fast. The longer this went on, the worse this was for me, but if I timed my attack even slightly off, this was all over. I needed a tactic and was running out of time to come up with one. That's when I noticed something though, her style of movement. Sliding on her acid? I could take advantage of that. I just needed to get her on the offensive, but how? I stood back, keeping my back foot just barely inside the arena. Hey Mina. She turned to me, smiling. What's up? I smirked with a confident grin, hoping this bluff would work. You just want to make a mess, or do you actually want to fight? She seemed to take that in stride, charging at me as fast as she could, slowly but surely picking up speed on a large jet of acid, spinning around to unleash a powerful spinning haymaker to my stomach, only for it to with entirely, as I was no longer there once she turned around. Where was I? Flying right at her at top speed from behind, my foot colliding with her chest when she turned around. Yeah, at last second when she spun to attack, I launched myself straight up. Then diagonal down towards the ground, then straight at her from behind. A three-pronged triangle attack of lasers. However, for a second I thought it was all for naught. Her acid spray from her fingers flew at me, landing on my thigh and stomach, causing me intense pain when they quickly burned through my clothes. If this one-man over didn't work, then I had basically lost. Luckily it did. With her already being at the edge and having low traction with her acid, she had just barely slid over the line from the impact of my flying kick. It was over as Midnight cried out. Ashido has stepped out of bounds. The winner of the match is Rasheen. I had to go to see Recovery Girl to get my acid burns healed, as well as be assigned a new tracksuit due to the holes in my old one from said acid. Luckily, like before, the injury healed up pretty quickly, but Ashido's quirk really had a habit of causing a lot of pain to her opponents. The last thing I'd ever want to do is actually be her enemy if this is what I'd be up against. Due to my detour, I unfortunately missed the match after mine, Yaoyorozu vs Tokoyami. The match that would decide my next opponent. Based on seeing Yaoyorozu's disappointment when I returned though, the answer quickly became obvious. I'd be facing Tokoyami. Out of the two, I was honestly nervous about going up against Yaoyorozu, so this may have been for the best, especially given how things went with her during our battle trial a while back. Her mirror maze to pinball me around would be a nightmare to deal with in an arena where going out of bounds means an instant loss. As for what was going on in the arena when I returned, it was an absolute slugfest. Kirishima vs Tetsu. A fight in a large arena with two meatheads who both relied heavily on melee quirks and enhanced defenses? This was going to be a while, which I was glad for as it gave me even more time to rest before my match in the next bracket. Eventually though, the fight ended in a draw, leaving the two to have another challenge of a sort later after they recovered. This was then followed up by the match that many people had feared. Bichugo vs Uraka. The only person I had any issues with in our class. Versus someone who'd been nothing but kind, accepting and supportive towards me. And I'll admit, the fight was quite hard to watch. I was admittedly taken aback by the responses of my peers to this fight, being so angry towards the guy for going all out. I mean, this is normal Bichugo behavior. And everyone seeming to think this was especially poor behavior, because she's a girl, only made things worse. He was treating her as a worthy opponent. An equal. He was just better equipped for combat than her, despite her clever, well-thought-out attempt to take him down. At least the guy saw her as a worthy opponent, which I did have to respect. Regardless, after a bit of time to repair the arena and being there to cheer up Uruaka after her loss despite her seeming not to need it, we all sat down to watch the beginning of the second round. Naturally, it was a match that seemed to have everyone excited, Midoriya versus Todoroki. To say the least, Midoriya really came into his own here, seeming angered at Todoroki for his hesitancy to use his full potential against us. The fight lasted a lot longer than many expected, but I had full faith in Midoriya to pull through and stand his ground. I was also predicting Todoroki's victory, but I was glad to see the friend who supported me in so many ways really make a showing in front of everyone, despite his defeat. Originally, I was hoping to run down and see Midoriya, cheering him up in the aftermath of that intense match, but Recovery Girl was adamant about him not having visitors while she performed surgery on him. I'm guessing his injuries were larger than I thought. I can only hope he's okay. But in the aftermath, I couldn't let that be my focus. My next match was coming soon, and from the sounds of things, the previous one between Ida and Shiozaki ended surprisingly quickly, with Ida as victor, much to my surprise. And as such, I had to be ready, for it was time for me to face off with the darkness. My match with Tokoyami was about to begin. As I entered the arena once more, I saw Tokoyami across from me, and I was already planning how to handle this fight. This would be an interesting one, as we were a pretty even match. My speed and dexterity were good tools, but they wouldn't be useful if I couldn't actually get in on him without Dark Shadow getting in the way. But I doubt that Dark Shadow was fast enough to hit me either. There was one way I knew I could get through. It would be very easy actually, but the risk to Tokoyami was too great. If I messed up and was off on my timing by even a nanosecond, a move like that could kill him. I couldn't do it. I'd have to just find a way around. I mean, the idea of not just having blood on my hands, but the blood of the classmate who saved my life back in the USJ in the rainstorm, that would be far too much. I was so locked in my focus on being prepared I just barely heard the buzzer, seeing Dark Shadow emerge from his body. He tried to slam me down, but I was quickly able to dodge to the right. Seconds later I tried to charge in to attack, turning human just before the strike, only for Dark Shadow to block my kick. He tried to throw me off, but I had already leapt off Dark Shadow's arm by that point. I had to go around, flying up, behind, and down, trying to land a spinning kick on Tokoyami. Blocked as well. With this time, Dark Shadow grabbing my leg and throwing me towards the edge of the arena. Luckily I was able to activate my laser form and get back toward him and on my feet before it was too late. Gonna hide behind your little friend the whole time, Birdbrain? I shouted out. God, even thinking back I thought that nickname was dickish and unlike me, but I had to try whatever I could to just get any attempt to get past Dark Shadow's defensive wall. Anything except that. Mock me all you like. I will be victorious, was his only response, before throwing out another punch from Dark Shadow. A punch that I dodged by firing myself straight up from above. He wasn't dropping his guard. My bluff didn't work, but maybe I could counter his punch, launching myself down. No, blocked again, this time with Dark Shadow using its other arm to grab me by the neck. Strangling me. A futile effort, as I just went laser form to escape his grip and get back before turning human again, getting back my bearings. This was going to be a problem. I was too fast and nimble for him to hit, but Dark Shadow is basically a defensive wall I can't get past. We're at a complete impasse here where neither of us could do anything. Will he accept that one thing but... And no, absolutely not. I was desperate, trying to find any opening I could. Flying all over the place trying to hit him with a kick or a punch from every angle. Each strike blocked, every attack he tried to pull off being dodged. I was getting exhausted, and clearly so was he. Both of us didn't have a scratch on us, but we were near our breaking limit. This was just going to end up like Kirishima and Tetsu all over again. Just going on forever and ever until one or both of us fell over from pure exhaustion. I couldn't deny it any longer. There was only one way this would end. It was a gamble, a huge one with my opponent's life on the line. But he was giving me no choice but to take it. I launched my laser form straight ahead at Tokoyami. Dark Shadow. Once more, the shadow came up to block my way. The difference this time, I didn't change back to human form. I let my laser impact Dark Shadow, trying to cut through them. Unlike every other attack I've ever thrown, using my laser form as a weapon instead of merely a traversal method or way to build up momentum. I knew the light off the impact would quickly start reducing down Dark Shadow's size and power. But once I did break through, if I didn't change back to human form at that exact moment, I'd fly right through Tokoyami, either severely injuring or most likely killing him. Turn back too soon, Dark Shadow's still up and we're back at square one. Turn back too late, I do something horrible that could end the life of someone I consider a friend and comrade. The window would be less than half a second. Everything was on the line. Dark Shadow shrinking smaller and smaller until eventually, I broke through. And the result? The timing was perfect. Turning human form right behind where Dark Shadow used to be, using my momentum to deliver a fierce haymaker right into Tokoyami's face. The impact sent him flying back, clearly landing a decent ways out of the arena in the aftermath. It was an insane gamble with high stakes. Something I always knew I should never do. But this time it paid off as I heard the words. That's the match. The winner is Rasheen. I ran immediately up to Tokoyami, asking if he was okay, only to quickly affirm he was perfectly fine. I guess one punch, even one with basically lightspeed levels of momentum behind it, wouldn't be enough to take any of us out, but I had to be sure. Naturally, we both started walking back to the dugout together. But I must ask, if you had that in your toolkit this whole time, did I ever truly stand a chance? Wait, what? With your laser form generating both light and heat like that at such intensity, it was a perfect counter to Dark Shadow. In a way, you're a bad matchup for me. I'm surprised I held out as long as I did. Then again, given how things were going, I guess you were holding back. I could only sigh, because I knew he was right. I was holding back. But I was doing so because my power could be lethal if used in certain ways. Was it still disrespectful to not go all out, even despite that? No. They said in the rules no lethal force was allowed. Even beyond my morals, that was not a viable option. I couldn't be blamed for that. Anyway, I watched Tokoyami head back up to his seat while I stayed in the rest area, watching the next few matches on the TV alone, knowing my next fight was only 2 fights away, making it pointless to head up since I'd just have to come back right away anyway. The match that would decide my next opponent. Kirishima versus Bakugo. This could be a problem. After all, my quirk doesn't provide me any sort of strength boost, so the only way I had to viably damage Kirishima at all was with my laser form itself, which would cause him serious injury and probably kill him. And Bakugo. I had a better chance, since he is still vulnerable to normal attacks. Even despite the fact that neither of our quirks counter one another, making things a fair fight, he's still fierce as hell. Taking him down would be a lot more possible, but very difficult on any level. Not to mention he was the only person in our class I could not on any level consider a friend. No matter which way it went, I had a huge challenge ahead of me. Luckily for my prospects, the most likely result is exactly what occurred after what was admittedly a pretty fierce battle overall. Bakugo won, he'd be next. We were in the semifinals, and thus it was time to start preparing for my fight, as there was only one battle between me and my next match. Todoroki versus Ida. Despite having nothing but respect for both of them, this one was an obvious stomp. Don't get me wrong, Ida's my friend and ally. But he had a lot harder a fight to win here than Todoroki did, given just how powerful he was. Ida, though, did surprise me. He got in there fast over Todoroki's ice attacks, trying to force him out of the arena after leaving him disoriented with a powerful kick to his head, only for Todoroki to immobilize him mid-run, bringing the match to a quick, yet impressive end. I do gotta respect Ida for the attempt though, it was clever and well played into his speed. But of course, after a few minutes to clean the ice out of the arena, it was time. I stepped up to the plate, ready to face him. Present mixed little nicknames and hype were far from the first thing on my mind as I looked Bakugo in the eye. He was the first of us to speak up. I was really hoping I'd face off with Deku in the finals. Looks like that's not happening now. He looked me in the eye, a sadistic grin quickly forming. I guess you'll have to do, fake you. When it comes to this guy, since it seemed a violent encounter between us was now going to happen, I saw no reason to hold this back anymore. Bakugo, I always hated that little nickname you have for me. He stayed silent, raising an eyebrow and gritting his teeth in anger. Yeah, I look like Midoriya. I know that, everyone knows that, it's not news. And he may be a friend of mine, but I'm my own DM in person. I'm not Midoriya. And I'm sick of you treating me like I'm just some offshoot of him because of your demon obsession. All Bakugo could do was crack his neck, raising his hands behind him as he got into his usual fighting pose. Well then, show me what makes you so different. He set off an explosion behind him to send himself flying at me. Because as far as I see it, he unleashed a giant explosion where I was standing, forcing me to launch myself upwards into the air with my laser form to dodge his attack. You're just as much of a loser as he is. I zoomed in and turned human right behind him, unleashing a side kick right into his back, only for him to turn into the attack and unleash a powerful explosion into my face. Unlike my previous opponents, his insane attack speed was faster than my ability to react to it, and I was launched back, forcing myself to use my laser form to halt my momentum and not go flying out of the arena. He continued the assault, flying right at me with a myriad of explosions, each one I had to dodge with my laser form to just barely avoid getting blasted yet again repeatedly. I swear, it was almost a destructive dance between the two of us, both desperately trying to get in close with our attacks while avoiding the others. I was far faster than him in terms of moving around the environment, but he could unleash an attack far faster than I could even dodge one, much less unleash my own. I tried to attack from behind again, only for him to blast a large explosion from his hands behind himself. That's not gonna work a second time, light bright. The blast launched me back, forcing me to turn into my laser form to launch myself above him. I might have had a plan at this point. I knew it would be painful, but I at least had to try. I charged straight down above him in laser form, turning human form just above him with my leg outstretched to perform a heel drop kick to his head, thinking I could discombobulate him like Ida did to Todoroki last match. Nice try. Naturally, Bakugo reacted quickly, unleashing a large explosion into my face. But with my already insane trajectory due to having just been moving at light speed and keeping my momentum, I tanked through the explosion and landed my kick, slamming his head into the ground. It hurt like hell, having all that smoke and fire surrounding my body, but we'd seen firsthand with Uruaka earlier that landing a direct hit was not an instant win card for him. It was painful as all hell, but something I could survive and keep going through despite the pain. We were suddenly both pretty dim and hurt due to that stunt, my tracksuit basically in tatters, and Bakugo clearly dealing with one hell of a headache, courtesy of yours truly. I was hoping beyond all hope that he wouldn't get up from that hit. Hoping this was all over. My hopes went unheeded, as from the ground, he launched me away, and himself into the air with two large explosions. You really think that will keep me down beach? I'm still in this sheet, the a-hole shouted out. To avoid flying out of the arena, I had to turn into my laser form to stop my momentum and reverse course, flying at Bakugo once again to attack. I planned to rush ahead, just turn back to human form at the last second before hitting him again like I had so many times before, but I didn't expect him to launch himself towards me in that moment. And as a result, I wasn't fast enough to stop my laser form from flying right through Bakugo. I panicked, turning human form upon hitting the ground and turning around to see if he was okay, desperate to see just how bad it was. He was shaking and covered in blood, with a large hole opened up through his right shoulder and some of his chest. A hole large enough that I could see behind him through it. This is why I was so afraid of using my laser form for direct engagement. The damage was too great, too powerful. The only reason I risked it with Dark Shadow was because I thought I could stop before reaching Tokoyami, but this? I had potentially just destroyed Bakugo's body. If I were even slightly off from where that hit landed, he would be dead right now. I could have just killed my classmate. What have I done? Can I really be a hero if I make mistakes like this? He almost died. That injury is absolutely horrible. I'm responsible for that. Oh God, what have I? He slowly walked up to me, drops of blood trailing behind him as he did so. The entire arena fell silent as Bakugo stood before me, lifting up his one good arm. You won't take me down that easily. I'm still gonna win this sheet. His hand unleashed a gigantic explosion in my face, sending me flying out of the arena while I was frozen in horror, emotionally unable to move a muscle, his body falling to the grass outside the arena under the force of the blast. It was over. I was out of the competition. I lost. Not that I deserved to win after what I had done. Midnight herself actually had to coax me out of my fetal position and off the field, as I was frozen in a toxic mix of regret, guilt, and disappointment. For one, the world saw that. This was the UA Sports Festival after all. What pro would ever want to work with someone who almost killed someone by accident? If this could be the end of the line for me, entirely. Not to mention just how far this had all gone. What was there to do? I couldn't bring myself to face the others. After all, he was a fellow classmate. What else could they think of me after that? I ran as fast as my legs could take me, not daring to use my quirk at all, running back through the crowds to the empty main campus building, and finding a private study room to hide in and just cry. I couldn't face anyone. Not like this. I knew for sure I was entirely disqualified from the competition, if not expelled from UA for this. I mean, even on a reputational level, they'd have to in order to maintain their image of student safety, wouldn't they? I had no idea how long I was alone in that room, terrified of what would happen when I stepped outside and had to face the reality behind me. Eventually, though, I was surprised to hear the door open, only to see a figure I certainly did not expect to be there walking in. 13, the black hole hero, now clearly all healed up after what happened back at the USJ. I quickly stood up, rushing for the other door in a panic when, "Rishin, please. Stop." I did as asked, freezing in place as she looked at me, gesturing to me to sit down. I silently did so, with her sitting down across from me. "Now, before I say anything else, just know, you're not in trouble." My eyes went wide in shock, staring at her, trying to figure out just why. 13 leaned in, clearly making sure this was clear. You may not have noticed, but Bakugo charged in as well. He was being reckless with his own safety in how he handled things. This isn't entirely on you. You were doing nothing different than what you were doing in your matches with Ishido and Tokoyami. He's the one who put himself closer up than you were expecting him to be. I sighed, gripping at my arms, curling in, nervous. How'd you find me? Principal Nizu followed you on the security cameras. We all knew you needed someone to talk to you, and I knew I was the best equipped to do so. Of course that was the answer. The principal was well renowned for his quick thinking. Do you remember what I told you at the USJ? Before we were attacked, I mean. I shook my head. Everything else that happened that day. Anything said by anyone was the smallest detail in comparison. Simply put, me and you have a very similar concern, Rasheen. Both of us have quirks that if we don't control and ensure their safety when used, can cause great harm. That's why the staff had me be the one to speak to you. I know from personal experience where you're coming from. I listened, silently, just letting her continue. And as such, this is a reality you will have to face going forward. It's painful, but it's the truth, especially in our line of work. No matter how responsible you are with your power, accidents will still happen. I wanted to be a hero to help people, to make them smile, to be a supportive and hopeful figure in their time of need. I didn't even want to fight. I wanted to be a pure rescue and stage event hero, because I don't like hurting people, not even the bad guys. How can I keep doing this, when I know that if I slip up, something like what happened to Bakugo could happen again? Who knows, maybe I will kill someone next TI. Maybe that's what will happen, or maybe it never will. 13 interrupted, looking me dead in the eye. The world is a complicated and chaotic place, Rasheen. With those who want to exploit that chaos as a constant presence, and major disasters that can occur at a moment's notice, it's true. But that's why we're here. We heroes are the ones that try to bring order to that chaos. It's because we're here, ready to fight for it, that the smiles you hope to bring can't happen unless we're willing to step up. The room fell silent as I looked up at her. And yes, mistakes will happen and people will get hurt. And we will, or at least we should hold ourselves accountable when we're at fault. But that's no reason to stop trying. Because the situation isn't going to get better unless someone's there to make it better. I slumped back in the chair, nervous. So, are you gonna just sit back, give up, and let this accident rule you? Or are you gonna be a hero someday? Those words were exactly what I needed. Just some hope and idea that I didn't just destroy everything in that arena. And I'll admit, the fact that this was being said at all gave me some hope that I could move past this. You know, your friends are really worried about you. I was shocked to hear those words, rushing for my cell phone, surprised to see a ton of messages. Mina Ishido. Rasheen. Are you okay? Hyokojiro. Come back. It's okay. Hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 hashtag. Hey, it's Midoriya. Jiro just spread around your number, message us back, okay? Hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 hashtag. This is Ida. We don't blame you for what happened. Come back. Hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 hashtag. This is Yaoyorozu. We're really worried about you, Rasheen. Please respond. Hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 hashtag. Yurika here. Please don't scare us like this, Rasheen. We need to talk to you. There was that plus even more. Messages from Tokoyami, Siro, Hagakure, Su, Aoyama, Ojiro, basically everyone in class except Bakugo himself. Honestly, I couldn't help but cry seeing that. How's Bakugo? He'll be fine. The wound he received is pretty major, and he may not be able to control that arm as well as he used to anymore, but Recovery Girl says he should be able to make an almost full, recovery. They have said they'll hold off the finals until the final day, acting as the new final event after the third-year finals, just to give him more time to come out of this in decent condition to fight. I couldn't help but take a deep sigh of relief. This could have been so much worse. But things did seem in the end like they were turning around. Now, let's say we get you back to the rest of your class, shall we? I nodded, following 13 out of that study room and all the way back to the arena, my face covered in tears. Eventually we made it back, where the rest of Class 1A was waiting. Rusu, both Mina and Jiro seemed to shout at the sight of me. Wait, did the two of them just say Rusu? Mina rushed up and basically tackled me in a hug as Jiro gave a smug smirk. Are you okay? Midoriya asked. I had to take a second, standing up to look over at everyone, all of whom seemed to clearly be showing their concern. No, admittedly I'm not. Not after what I've done. But I will be. Going home that night was difficult. Mom was proud of me for going so far, but annoyed I didn't at least stay in the arena the slightest bit longer to clinch the win, thinking I just gave up when I froze in horror at what happened to Bakugo. To hear those words from her, not realizing the gravity at all, really did sting, but it's not like I had much of a choice but to take it if I didn't want to endure another shouting session from her. We sat back and let the other 2 years have their event, letting Bakugo have the time to heal from what I had done to him. I did try to talk to him while we were watching the second-year games, apologizing profusely, but all he had to say in his usual bitter, yet angry tone was, "You lost the match, I won, it's over. Go bother someone who gives a sheet, light bright." I'll admit, his penitent for nicknames was a weird thing for him now that I thought about it, but I massively preferred this new one he had for me over fake you, even if both were insults in their own unique ways. Eventually, though, the third-year finals ended, and thus the belated first-year final match could begin. Todoroki versus Bakugo. Both had clearly earned the right to be in position after what both of them endured. Todoroki having to change his ideals and growing as a person after his fight with Midoriya, and Bakugo having gotten his body broken to the point of near death, but still standing, ready to fight anyway. It was interesting to witness. Bakugo was clearly desperate to make this win mean something after all he endured and sacrificed to be here, especially given the permanent injuries to his right arm that made it less effective. Todoroki didn't have the same spark as he used to. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was Midoriya helping him to open up, the extra 2 days of grace PRD, there's many potential answers, but While he still made a good showing, Todoroki wasn't putting in his best like he used to. And Bakugo wasn't having any of it. I swear, he seemed angrier at Todoroki for losing the fight without giving it his all than he did at me after I nearly killed him. Luckily Midnight was there to subdue him, allowing the awards ceremony to begin. Everyone was there to applaud and see this thing come to a close, with Bakugo standing triumphant on top, despite being chained to the podium with a muzzle like a dog. Todoroki standing on the second-place podium, and me on the third, the crowd cheering around us. Apparently I was supposed to share the third-place spot with Ida, but he has left sometime during the match due to some kind of family emergency. I could only hope they were okay, but in the end, I didn't know if I deserved the third place after what happened, but I more than earned it. However, that was not the only thing that occurred that day. Aizawa pulled me aside after the ceremony, demanding I come with him to one of the school's gymnasiums. Inside, I was surprised to see a new figure, a young woman in black leggings, a bomber jacket, goggles, and a crop top with a strange clock motif. Rasheen, Aizawa said. Meet Flashback. She's a pro-hero we have on retainer to help us when certain rare, yet repeated situations come up with students in their quirk development. Hey, said the lady. So, what's this about, Teach? Remember how you said a while back you were scared of splitting your laser form through prisms or raindrops, thinking it could be the equivalent of cutting your own body in half, and thus kill you? Aizawa asked. Of course, we discussed that a few weeks ago. Well, Flashback's quirk allows her to send her consciousness back in time. So, she's here to help us test if your theory's really something to be concerned about. Holy cow, her quirk is amazing. Yeah, not as much as you may think, said Flashback. I can maybe only accumulate like 10 minutes a day in the amount of time turned back. We're only doing this now because until recently she was out of the country on assignment, said Aizawa. She only returned just in time to attend the sports festival, where you kids had other things to deal with, so now's the time we can do this. A small podium rose up with a crystal prism on top, making me nervous. Rasheen, fly through the prism in your laser form, unless Flashback here tells you not to. Indeed, said Flashback. That way, if you're right and this is dangerous or life-threatening, I can send myself back and stop you before you actually do it. It would make sense that UA would employ something like this. Potentially dangerous quirk hypotheticals, while rare, were something that should be tested to see if they're really as dangerous as one may think. I took a deep breath, scared as hell about doing this, thinking that despite Flashback's safety net, I was still about to do something that could kill me. I had to go through with it. I turned into my laser form and launched myself into the prism, which split me into 2 different laser beams. When I returned back to human form, I don't even know how to describe the feeling of it. Goddamn, said Aizawa, shocked at the results. What's it like, Rasheen? The reason he was asking was because there was now 2 of me in the room, mirroring one another's actions perfectly. When one lifted its right arm, the other lifted its left at the exact same time, in the exact same way. This is so wrong. I feel everything. I'm somehow seeing out of 4 eyes. My hearing is in 2 different places at once. I can't. I curled up on the floor and started screaming, so unbelievably uncomfortable with what I was feeling that I couldn't do anything else. And the screams themselves only made things worse, as coming from 2 different sets of vocal cords, heard by 4 different ears in different places, the sensory nightmare was absolutely horrific. Rasheen, go back through the prism the other way now. Aizawa screamed. I obeyed, just wanting this feeling to stop, not having the mental capacity to do anything but follow the basic instruction. Luckily, in doing so the 2 different beams converged back into one, so returning to a singular body was a very comforting relief as I desperately caught my breath. Okay, so while it seems very taxing on you psychologically, the process of splitting the beam is actually physically safe. Good to know, said Aizawa, as I sat down on a nearby bench. You still need me here? Asked Flashback. No, we're good. Thanks for coming in. Flashback made her exit as Aizawa sat down next to me. Sorry about that, Aizawa. I don't know how to describe. Don't apologize, kid. That could not have been easy. I can only imagine what it's like literally being in two places at once. Aizawa handed me a bottle of water, which I gladly took and chugged down. But now that we know it's safe and has potential to be utilized, sounds to me like you have new potential to explore with your quirk. Aizawa gave me a smug grin, which I'm glad to have seen after his injuries. But I can barely maintain myself split like that for a few seconds before the strangeness of it all just breaks me down. That was so wrong. I don't know if I can do that. You can and you will, kid, said Aizawa. Sure, you can't utilize it properly yet. You'll need time to get used to the feeling so you can maintain that form without going nuts. Then you'll need to learn how to coordinate yourself among multiple mirrored bodies making the same motions. All of that will need to be accounted for before you can even think of utilizing this technique in the field. These aren't things I expect of you right now, but they are things you'll be able to achieve with practice, should you put in the hard work. Aizawa took a drink of water as I looked down at the bottle he handed me. Thank you, sir. I appreciate this. No problem, just don't pee out and actually do the legwork. Actually practice this new possibility, don't just leave it behind because it's hard. Yes, sir. Aizawa made his way to the exit, waving back. You did good today. Dismissed. Ever since that day, among the many other things I had to face, there was one small detail that kept nagging at me. Rusu. Yes, it was nice to hear Mina and Jiro call it out in the moment, but the more I think back on it, the more wrong it starts to feel. Like, it's finally time I took the effort to properly change it. Find one that fits me as opposed to hanging on to my old, masculine name. But I was at an impasse. What name should it be? My entire ride to school, now that things were returning to normal, I spent racking my brain for ideas. Kyoko, nah, sounds too close to Kyoka, don't want to seem like I'm ripping my friend off. Karen so. Admittedly, I was caught in my own head with these thoughts, and thus didn't realize all the people looking at me in fear. I guess with the sports festival being televised, a lot of people saw what happened, thus their reactions to me. However, there was one reaction I don't know how to handle. A little girl on the train noticed me and said, "Hey, you're that cool kid who took down the mean bully, aren't you?" Wait, what? Yeah, after what he did to that girl. It was so cool to see you take him down a peg. Says he got the win though. That reaction to what happened threw me off so much and felt so awkward I just retreated back into conceptualizing my name to escape addressing it. Perhaps I should go with something that starts with an R. Considering I'm trying to be a hero, the alliteration with my last name, Rasheen, would fit, even if it does sound like an American way of looking at things. Rinka, nah, sounds too aggressive. Right? No, doesn't feel right. Eventually though, I did get to class, and thus had to put these considerations on hold for the moment. Perhaps for the best, as today sounded like it was going to be a very busy day. Aizawa started off informing us of what was going to go down. First off, by tomorrow he expected all of us to have a proper hero name, much to the class's shock. Why is this? The hero agency draft picks for internships. Seeing the results was an interesting affair, as everyone at least got some offers to work with pro heroes. Going in, I expected to be low. I mean, what pro would want to work with the girl who couldn't be trusted to not hurt someone in the field? To my surprise though, out of the class, my results were slightly higher than the average. I guess there were some people who wanted to work with me after all, much to my shock. According to Aizawa, normally they'd give us the time to decide our name during class, but things would be a bit different for us, so we'd only be doing presentations the next day, with names that didn't meet UA's standards being given time to be revised afterwards. Why is that? As Aizawa put it, due to the events of the USJ attack, we never received the proper remedial rescue training that we should have had that day, and they didn't want to send us to the pros without it. As such, we'd be returning to the USJ now that it had been repaired and had added security, to do things properly this time. While many were nervous given what we experienced there, I was actually excited to finally get that training I was hoping for this time. Not to mention Aizawa's attempts to get us to face our issues head on really playing paramount here. But there was another reason I was so excited. After all this time, my new hero costume was ready. As everyone arrived at the bus stop, ready to go, I stepped out to reveal my new look. A mostly green, corseted dress with blue accents, the green taking in the blue in waved, almost lightning-esque patterns. The skirt of the dress flared out at the bottom like an upside-down, six-petaled flower, the end of each adorned in a neon blue blade as the edge of it, with tear-shaped, blue gemstones sewed into the petals as well for added flair. Arm length, cut-resistant, blue gloves. Black leggings made of Hatsum's blade-repelling material. A set of long, green boots that stretched to just below the knee with blue, specially designed socks in them that went to just over the knee. Overall, at first I was nervous I may have gone a bit too overboard on the color to compensate for my old black costume, with the bright greens and neon blue. But, after seeing myself in it, I realized my worries were unfounded. This was actually a look I was happy with. My classmates seemed to agree, Midoriya comparing the look to almost like that of a classic magical girl costume. As someone who watched quite a bit of those shows as a kid, the comparison was very much appreciated. "Damn it, you're looking cute, Rusu," said Mina. "Yeah, that look suits you much better," was Jiro's comment. Jiro's statement seemed to get a lot of approval and piggybacking off of it, so I'll take that as a sign of the class's overall approval. Regardless, it felt nice to finally belong in regards to everyone's expressive looks, instead of just wearing something so basic like I used to. 13 took us through the USJ properly this time, going over basics like fire safety, the physics knowledge needed to keep things safe in landslide rescues, proper resuscitation techniques, etc. While it wasn't as helpful as I'd like for my overall goal, finding a way to utilize my quirk more efficiently in a rescue scenario, the information was still vital and useful. Even if admittedly the majority of it I already knew in advance from my old volunteer work days. In the end though, after school, all the girls got together to discuss hero names as a group, thinking it would be a good way to bounce them off each other. What about Alien Queen?" asked Mina. "Nah," replied Hagakure, "while fitting, I doubt you'd want to deal with the copyright issues." "Yeah, that would be a problem," Mina responded. Admittedly, I now had two different names to choose, both of them having to represent me and who I am. At this point though, I thought it best to ask for advice for both. "What about just Lightspeed Ribbit?" "Nah, too boring," Hagakure replied. "Okay, are you just going to reject everything someone suggests, Hagakure?" asked Duruaka. "No, I'm just trying to be helpful." "Geez. Fine, I'll suggest something. How about Mother Earth, given that blue and green costume you have now?" That didn't seem fitting at all. "Oh hey, there you are." We were surprised to turn and see Hatsum run up to us. "Oh hey, how's it going?" I replied. "It's going great. My new baby's almost done. Just waiting on the 3D printer to finish some of the last parts." "By the way, how'd the new costume turn out?" "It was perfect, thank you." "See, I knew those blades in the petals would be perfect. I even found a way to keep the shock abortion in those shoes and gloves so you can utilize your full velocity for kicks and punches without damaging yourself. Pretty cool, huh?" "Yeah, it'll be plenty useful." I started scratching the back of my head, just caught up in her enthusiasm. We brought her into the naming conversion, only to be surprised when she said, "What about Rise? Would that work for a name for ya?" That one hit hard. It sounded fitting somehow, like it was meant to be. Just to be sure, I said it out loud. "My name is Rise Rasheen." That worked. "Looks like you found it, Rise," teased Mina, laughing a bit. Yeah, I did. Thanks, Hatsum. What can I say? I'm a genius in more ways than one." The next day, we all finally were brought together at the beginning of class to reveal our hero names. Some better than others, but most turned out pretty well given the extra time to think. For me though, when I stepped up to the plate, I knew exactly what I had to do. Over the course of this school year, I've changed so much. Learned so many things about myself. It's almost like I'm slowly seeing so much of the world from a new perspective. Plus, given everything, including my power, I'm going with. I turned around the card, revealing my answer. I am the Lightspeed hero Prisma.